What's up, everybody? How's it going? Welcome to another Dansg08 podcast. In this one, I will be joined by the very talented Alex Moukala. If you don't know who he is a musician, composer, and producer who is taking the internet by storm with his recent covers and tutorial videos and reaction videos for some of the video game soundtracks that we all know and love. So I hope you guys enjoy this conversation. We talked about a wide range of topics. He's a really big Final Fantasy fan, but we spoke about music, we spoke about our careers, we spoke about life. There's a lot of interesting stuff in this one, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you all for listening. Let's get into it. Okay, so for this episode, we're joined by the very talented Alex Moukala. Hey, man.
Hey, guys. Hey, Berg. What's up?
I'm doing well, man. How about you?
All great here. Glad to be here talking to you guys about Final Fantasy. Like, it's my favorite thing on earth. So, we're going to be vibing.
Yes, exactly. I'm glad, man. I mean, when someone, I had like a few people share your content with me, and it was just like such a breath of fresh air to see someone like legitly. It wasn't one of these things where I think the first thing that I got from it was that like you seemed to be a very genuine Final Fantasy fan. It wasn't like you spotted something where you thought, oh, this could be, cool, that could get people's attention.
Yeah, no.
I'll just do it. It's like, it's real. Like the fanship is real.
Well, I'm glad you noticed. That makes me happy.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of Final Fantasy fans in my time. I mean, I've been on YouTube since 2008, and
wow.
You can spot who the legit fans are.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting series. Like people hop on, everyone hops on a different point. I had the luck of starting with FF7 as a kid. Like that was one of the first games I ever played, and even though it was in English and I'm Italian, I didn't understand much of it. I still was blown away so much by the game.
We're a similar age, right? I think you're 28, I think, right?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm 29. So when you first played Final Fantasy 7, you were like how old? Like 6, 7,
I was 6, yeah. Like when you're that age, you don't really understand. Like you see cool stuff. You see, I don't know, the Airbuster robot, or you see the Chocobos and these huge Cobra and stuff. You're like, you can summon an Ifrit. You're like, whoa, this is all so freaking cool. But I did not understand the language fully. Actually, I started to learn English because of Final Fantasy 7, but I didn't fully understand what was going on. And so I had the chance of playing it when I was a kid and getting very far in the game, but then playing again as a teenager with a better understanding of English and a better understanding of life. So it was like playing it the first time again. And then I played it as an adult, and that hit me differently again. And then I played the remake, and that's a completely different experience. So let alone all the spin-offs they did on FF7, like the FF7 experience for me has been a beautiful journey because it keeps on growing with me. I keep on noticing different details every time I play. So it's a very good game.
Yeah, I think it's one of those games that, like you say, I think it ages well. It gives you something different based on what time in your life you play it. I think in that sense, it's really special.
Exactly. Sorry, I sabotaged the introduction, but so now people know that I'm a real fanboy.
No. I think you've made that sufficiently clear at the start, so that's good.
Yeah.
So you said that you're Italian. So when I spoke to you, I wasn't sure where you were based. You're based in Prague right now, but you're originally from Italy?
Yeah, I lived in London at a certain point too.
Oh, okay.
I like to move around a lot, and right now I'm in Prague, but I was born and raised in Italy. My parents are from Congo in Africa.
Okay.
It's like I'm an international person.
Yeah, I can tell.
That's the best way to describe it.
That's really cool, man. So what's been your favorite place out of the places that you've lived and been in?
Well, I think Prague and Tokyo. I wasn't, but I didn't live in Tokyo for long. Like I was there for like a month and a half or something. I just wanted to have the experience of living in Japan by myself for some time.
Yeah.
And it was great, but Prague is even better for me. But I still haven't found the place where I feel completely at home.
So it wasn't London then?
No, London was amazing though. London was great. But you're from the UK, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in London. Well, I kind of moved between Istanbul and the UK. I'm originally from, my parents are from Turkey, so I'm half Turkish and half, biologically I'm fully Turkish, but I was born and raised in the UK, if that makes sense.
Yeah, dude, and the UK does an amazing job at letting people integrate. I've never felt more okay being black than I did in the UK.
I definitely agree with that. I mean, especially like where I grew up as well. I mean, in and around the London area, it's impossible not to mix with people. Like, you know, for me, it's been a bit weird because like skin color wise, like I'm literally white, but because I'm from, like my parents are from Turkey, it's more like culturally, it's like Islamic culture, Turkish culture. It's a different kind of thing. I don't really associate culturally as much with white people, but I look like them.
Yeah.
And it's like, going to school and stuff, where I lived, it was very, there was a lot of Indian and Pakistani
Man,
population as
that's
well.
amazing. Like, I love to see that. Like, that's one thing that you will see in like fantasy games. Like, you have people from all walks of life in some fantasy games, so like different races, and they all coexist together, and different cultures and stuff. And I like to believe that people who grew up on Final Fantasy games should have a better understanding of all these things. And so I'm very surprised when I see, I don't know, Final Fantasy fans making war for Tifa versus Aerith. I'm like, this game should teach us about differences and love and just deep appreciation for everything. So I don't get how we can become so petty about this stuff. But it's great. But London was amazing. London was great. I just felt it was too hectic for me.
Was it also too expensive?
Yeah, also, and that's why I moved there. By the way, like I wasn't a place in my life where I got complacent. I want to live in Italy,
sure.
And I was like, I don't know. I don't know if this is what we were supposed to talk about in the podcast, but
there's no like I've got talking points like on a thing, but honestly, okay. I prefer the whole kind of just go with the flow and just see what comes out kind of thing.
Okay, well, the long story short, like my biggest goal my biggest goals with music is making music for a Final Fantasy game, which is like outlandish for a black person that doesn't speak Japanese and is not part of the culture to even think that it's possible to end up working in Tokyo for Square Enix. Like that would be such a, I don't think that happens often. Like there was Roberto Ferrari, who's Italian, and made like a design for FF15, FF7 remake, if I'm not wrong. And he's Italian, so that gave me hope. But that's my dream. And when you have such a big dream, you have to like kind of be compelled to growing a lot.
Of course.
And I got to a place sadly in my life a few years ago, when I got complacent because I was successful, and in Italy, to be successful at the level that I was already like 100% win, in my opinion. Like I was okay, and I was like, wow, I'm getting lazy, so I should put myself in an environment where the people around me are not so impressed about me, but they're like, oh, you're a musician and you make music for trailers? Whatever, I made music for a AAA game, So I decided to move to London. London is that place in Europe where people go there and they grow like crazy. Everyone there is amazing. Like if you talk to a waiter at a pizza restaurant, he's going to tell you that he's a drummer in a band, and it's great. It's super inspiring. And so I moved there for that. And also it was more expensive to live there. So I had to make more money, be more efficient at my job, and improve. So that's why I moved there. And it helped me a lot in that regard. But then I was like, okay, that's it. I need to go away from here. So that's the story.
Okay, I think for you, it sounds like that's just sort of who you are. You have this kind of nomadic kind of philosophy about life, maybe? Like you just like to
it's a new thing. It's a new thing, honestly. I actually am half and half. Like I like to have a place that is mine. Like right now in Prague, like I have my beautiful apartment. There's my studio and my guitars and everything. I like that. But I also like to explore and grow because I feel like I'm going somewhere and I cannot stop. Until I reach certain goals, I don't feel like stopping. So yeah, it's just about growth. It's kind of like I'm completing my sphere grid, I gotta get those AP. That's all.
Yeah, you can't go through life with no sphere grid, man. This isn't Final Fantasy,
Have you ever done that, like no sphere grid challenge?
Okay, so I think this is a good time to explain my channel name to you and where it comes from. So Dansg08 is a bit of an odd name. Like it's not, you can't really tell what it is. So back in like 2006, 2007, when I was first like really getting into Final Fantasy X,
great game.
I wanted to. Don't get me started on Final Fantasy X. We need to keep the focus on you. You're the guest here. Otherwise, I'll get carried away with Final Fantasy X.
I'm good about talking about Final Fantasy, but
I will come back to it. I will come back to it. So yeah, I mean, I got really into Final Fantasy X. I completed it. I did everything I wanted to do, and then on the internet, I found out about this like no sphere grid challenge for Final Fantasy X. I don't know if you're familiar with it. If you've ever seen anything about it, or
I know it exists.
Yeah. Okay.
And I know, how do you do that? Like, do you only use Aeons or something?
There's a whole lot of like tricks and tips, and a lot of it is to do with like armors and using like Riku is one of the main reasons you can do it. Like with her abilities, with Use, for example, you can apply, like, let's say you can't learn white magic using the sphere grid, but with Riku's items you can give people shell, protect, and haste and all that kind of stuff, and that sort of bridges the gap.
I see.
And I started doing that, and it was really fun. And then I read about, basically there were people that were doing, they were beating the Dark Aeons using no sphere grid. And I was like, that's just totally insane. Like, how's that possible? And it's like a mixture of like using your characters, but then also using your Aeons as well in conjunction, and basically defeating these crazy difficult Dark Aeons without ever activating a single node on the sphere grid. It was just really exciting.
Damn.
And at the time, there was basically the only Aeon that hadn't been defeated in like 2008 was Dark Anima. And that was known as like a holy grail sort of challenge. Like, no one's ever done it. It's possible, but it's extremely unlikely and extremely difficult to do. And I remember, like, as like a 15, 16-year-old, kind of just looking at that and being like, I want to be that guy. I want to be the first person to defeat Dark Anima with no sphere grid.
You mad lad. You really did it?
I did. I actually did. So basically in like 2008, I was active on the GameFAQs forums for Final Fantasy X. And back then, of course, if let's say you did defeat Dark Anima with no sphere grid, no one's going to believe you, because it's just so unlikely that someone just writing a forum post is not convincing enough to say you've done it.
Of course.
So I was like, well, if I ever do this, I need to convince people that I did. So maybe if I have a YouTube channel, I can record a video of it, like when I do it, and I can share it with people to say, look, here's the evidence, I've actually done it. So literally, that's how the YouTube channel was born, and that's why it's called Dansg08. So it's an acronym for Dark Anima No Sphere Grid 2008. That's where it comes from.
Whoa! That's incredible.
That's the story.
Wow. And I also like to start a YouTube channel with such a bomb video, like plenty of people, including myself, start the YouTube channel with a random video, but you start with this most epic moment in the Final Fantasy X fandom.
So
were you able to beat what's the name, Penance or Director? I don't remember what it was.
So not quite. So what happened was I started the channel in 2008 for the specific reason of uploading this video someday. So the plan for my channel was to literally have one video when I started. Like, that was it. I had no other intention of doing anything else. And obviously the thing about trying to do no sphere grid Dark Anima is that it's extremely tough, and it requires hundreds, thousands of attempts to do it. And before long, I realized, like, I'm probably never going to be able to do this, and I have this channel that is kind of sitting there with 0 videos. Why don't I just screw around and just put some stuff on it? So my first videos were Final Fantasy X videos, where like I had like an old CRT TV, and I had like a 3 megapixel Samsung phone, and I just kind of
that takes me back.
Yeah, like and I was just recording my TV screen. It had horrible like dark black interlacing lines like going through the screen and stuff. And like in I think it was July 2008. Those.
Oh, it's very meta, because that is exactly like the. You remember the spheres where there were videos in it, like the Jack spheres and stuff?
Yeah.
That's how they were, with the black.
It's true. They do have some interlacing things as well. That's true.
Yeah.
Damn, I never thought of that. That's good. I like that.
Yeah. So you did those videos?
Yeah. So that's how I started. Just literally just phone recorded, like no audio, just like horrible looking, like 2-3 minute videos of me doing random shit on Final Fantasy X. And I didn't defeat Dark Anima until 2011. It was May 2011 when I actually did that.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I mean, by that time, obviously, I'd started to get into doing some other things and that kind of stuff. But in May 2011, I uploaded like the video, like the reason for the channel's existence, and it's still the only one on YouTube. That no one's ever managed it since. So it's been pretty cool.
Wow. That's and also it was very smart to upload other clips before. Yeah. Because maybe that created a little bit of attention, and then when you dropped the freaking anima, everyone was like, whoa.
It did a bit, but honestly, like back in them days, like it was so difficult to get any kind of traction. I mean, I used to take like screenshots of like little milestones my channel had, and I think like after 2 years, I think I had like 50 subscribers or something like that.
Wow.
So, I'm going to get into that with your channel, but my channel's always had this sort of like, for the first 4 years or so, it was very slow, extremely slow. Like, I think maybe by like 2011, like after 3-4 years, I still barely had anything.
Yeah.
And then after about 2012, 2013, that was when, it started to swing upwards, and I noticed like growth, like legit growth. And then ever since then, like since 2013, 2014, the channel's always been on a very steady curve. Like it never blows up, and it never completely disappears. It's always
how many like subscribers or views you get like on a monthly basis?
Do you know? I average about like anywhere from like 700 to 2,000 subscribers a month, I would say. And it's pretty much always been that amount. Like it never becomes 5,000 and it never becomes 100 either. It's always like within that range.
Yeah, YouTube is kind of like that. Like each channel has its own speed depending on what type of content you're making.
Exactly.
Sometimes though, it might happen that a video of yours like explodes on no video before, and when that happens, the best thing you can do is to try to understand what the fuck happened on that video, and then see if you can replicate it in a way that is still gives value to the viewers, but that can teach you something.
Absolutely.
Also as a content creator.
Exactly. So for you, I mean, in terms of like your, everything to do with music and your life with music, has it been one of these things where like it's always been my passion? I've always known it's what I wanted to do, or did it develop later on? What's been your history with your music and your career?
I wish I started like the main story for many of the composers and musicians that I love is that when they were 4 years old, they played piano, and then they became like at 10, they were like virtuosos and they were amazing, and then they couldn't help but become composers because it's been their calling ever since. I played PlayStation when I was like 6. That's all I did. Like at 4, I played Donkey Kong Country on the SNES. Then I played PlayStation at 6. Then, my whole childhood was split between spending time with my friends outside, spending time with my friends indoors, playing PlayStation with them, and in the evenings playing PlayStation by myself. And I used to, like, when the PS2 came out, my parents didn't buy it to me because somehow the PlayStation 1 broke one day out of nowhere. Like, this happened, like, the disc reader was fractured one day. I just found it destroyed. Whoa. And I couldn't play any games anymore. So I had a computer and I found out about emulators and stuff like that. So I emulated PS1 games. Then when the PS2 came out, my parents didn't buy me the PS2 because the PS1 broke out of mystery. And they were like, we're not going to buy you a freaking 500 euros worth of console. Shut up. And so I had, like, my way to cope with that was, I cannot emulate the PS2. My computer is not strong enough. I would buy the strategy guides for Final Fantasy X and stuff like that. And I would read all of it. And I would recreate the game on an RPG Maker. Just so that I can play it. It was that level, like, poor gamer vibe. And I haven't told this story ever, but that's what I did. And that got me into creating stuff. Initially, it was an RPG Maker. I used to create these games, and I started then creating, like, the animations. And then one day I stumbled upon a program that let you, like, play music through a MIDI keyboard instead of a computer. And I was a huge fan of Final Fantasy music ever since I was a kid. I listened to the MIDI versions of the music, like the computer cheap sound fonts and stuff version of Final Fantasy X music, and it was my jam, dude. Like, I had banged that stuff like it was, I don't know, freaking metal album.
Yeah.
And however, I never really believed that I have any talent, so I didn't, like, how in school sometimes they come to ask kids if they can sing a note, and then they pick the two best kids in the class, and they're like, "Oh, you're gonna become a musician. Everyone else is shit."
Yeah.
I had that, and I was obviously shit. So I didn't believe I had the talents to even dare to make music. This until I was like 19, I think.
Wow. Okay.
When I was 19, when I was actually like 17, 18, I discovered this website called Overclock Remix. I don't know if you know about it.
No.
Dude. You have to check it out if you like Final Fantasy music. Overclocked Remix.
Okay.
It's this community where there's lots of different musicians that came together and they post remixes of video game music. And I found their FS7 album called Voices of the Livestream. And there were so many artists on there that made these fucking insane remixes of Final Fantasy music, each one in a different genre. There was an arrangement of there were so many cool arrangements there, man. There was like EDM, there was jazz, orchestral, everything, and it was so good. And I'm like, who are these people? Because this stuff is so good. Like, I never heard about their names. I thought that only the greatest of the greatest could ever compose music and that normal people could not, So I looked them up and I find out that one has a YouTube channel, like one is called Zircon. And Zircon was one of the leading members in this album. And he had this YouTube channel where he explained how he writes music. And I'm like, what the fuck? This guy is just like me. He's a normal person. And he's making music in this program called FL Studio. What is this? So through Overclock Remix, I found out there's lots of people producing music in their bedrooms. And it sounds amazing. And I was like, well, maybe I could try that too. And when I was 19, I finally decided after school, I'm going to ask myself, what the hell do I want to do in my life? And I was like, hey, okay, if I could do anything without failing, like that's the question I asked myself. What would I do if I if I was sure that I wouldn't fail. I was like, if I could do anything without failing, I'd love to become a musician and, make music, because music inspired me so fucking much. And especially with Final Fantasy music, like it changed my life.
Sure.
And it gave me a place to belong, and it made me so passionate about so many things, including the games, which taught me so much. All that happened because of the music. So I was like, I would love to do that for other people. I feel like I have a lot to say to the world. I'm a very philosophical person and, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
My friends always tell me that my advice is sound and great. So I thought, why not communicate to the world with music, which is the easiest language to understand and digest. I would love to do what Uematsu did for me to other people. So my goal became, hey, I'd love to become a musician and eventually end up making music for a Final Fantasy game and have that music impact a generation. But that was when I was 19. That's
a very 19-year-old sort of
exactly
thing. Yeah. Because I went through a similar thing. I think we have fairly similar stories in that regard, actually.
Really?
So yeah, for me, I got into film. So my kind of dream, my dream job, like when I was like in my mid-teens, I really started to get into watching films. Like back then, let's just say, you could find films a lot more easily for free on the internet. Yeah. And as like a 14, 15-year-old, that was like a gold mine, because you could just find whatever you wanted, whenever you wanted.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And just watch as much as you wanted all the time. And, aside from like playing video games, like watching films is one of the things I did most. And for me, it was kind of similar to how it was for you. Like I'd watch films and they'd leave you with like this sort of intangible feeling. Like when the credits start to roll, you have this sort of feeling that's hard to describe, like after you've watched a good film. And I think like back then, like 15, 16-year-old me was like, I'd love to try and be a part of the team that creates these things and try and make other people feel what these films have made me feel.
I think like it's these dreams are so compelling when you feel the push to do them for other people. Like,
I agree,
if you said, if your goal is like, hey, I want to become as big as, I don't know, Quentin Tarantino. I want to become a big movie producer because I want to have glory, then you're not going to do it. Like, because like if you only do it for yourself, the motivation is not strong enough and you're going to get lazy. But if you do it for other people, like I want to have an impact on other people, I want other people to feel amazing and blah, then you feel responsible. You know that you have something that inside you, that if you put it out there to the best of your abilities, other people are going to have their lives improved. And that is so compelling. I don't know why.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think when it comes to sort of more creative, artistic fields, I do think that always translates better, and you create better, more meaningful things if that's how you're approaching it, I think.
Yeah. So are you keeping up doing, like, are you doing films now? Like, do you?
Well, for me, it's been a bit of a roller coaster kind of career / life. At 18, academically I was always pretty good, and neither of my parents went to uni. They didn't have like higher education, that kind of stuff. And
so you were the golden boy who was supposed to go to uni for the rest. That was the same, dude, for me. Yeah. Like my parents did go to uni, and like, okay, my dad became like he used to be the ambassador or I don't remember, ambassador or maybe consul of Congo in Italy. He made it big.
That's epic.
Yeah, and you can imagine like for an immigrant to reach so high, like not an immigrant, for a freaking African kid to arrive to the levels that my dad did. Like if you come from Africa and you reach that high, you start to believe that everything you do or say is correct and you're the chosen one or whatever. So my dad believed that he knew exactly what was best for me because he made it big. Okay. And he wanted the best for me, obviously. That's what immigrant parents do. They're like, hey, we come from a different place and we have to prove ourselves, right? So absolutely. They wanted to be excel at academic stuff. And my parents wanted me to as well. But then, it's a long story, but eventually they accepted the fact that I'm just a freaking artist. And, it was hard in the beginning, but then when they saw the results, they're like, okay, you're not just messing around. You're doing stuff. We don't understand it, but, we see you're happy and you're doing fine. So whatever. We forgive you for not becoming Microsoft president. I'm like,
yeah, I mean, for me, it was For my parents, I think it was kind of in between. So because I was pretty good in school, they wanted me to carry on, go to uni, get a degree, and all of that kind of usual stuff. I was particularly good at economics.
Oh God.
And I wanted to study economics at uni because back then, I had this whole, I love films and I'd love to maybe try and make films or be a part of a team that makes films. But to me, that was just kind of, it was like a pipe dream. Like it didn't really feel like it was possible in any real way. And so I was like, the reality is that, you have a chance to go to a pretty good uni, go study economics, get your degree, go work in like an office somewhere in finance. Maybe by the time you're 30, you'll maybe have if you get into a good job in finance, you might have like a nice car, nice, apartment somewhere, that kind of thing. That's
life,
like
you want to live like a comfortable life.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
that's a pretty good desire, I think.
It is, yeah. There's nothing wrong with it, and I think especially as like a 17, 18-year-old, when you're first trying to make those kind of decisions. I mean, you don't really know what you want at that age, really. I mean,
at that age, you don't understand what the fuck is going on.
You have no idea. You have no
idea.
And then I think for me, it started to flip a bit when I went to this. I think it was like an investment banking seminar before I actually started uni. And a few of my friends went with me because, I mean, if you're going to study economics at uni, like investment banking is sort of like, like this is the great sort of job that I could have if I do well in my study and my career and stuff. And I looked at those guys at the seminar and they were like, I don't know, like they were like 38, 40 maybe, and they felt like really old and
they felt like they didn't have excitement or life.
No, like they're just completely like all about their work and all about their jobs and their suits and all that stuff. And I was like, that's cool if that's what your kind of desire is. But I think at that moment it kind of clicked that like, nah, this isn't really what I want from my life.
I had the same experience, like similar experience. Like I'm freaked out by the similarities here, man. Like I decided to make music at 19 because at 19 I finished high school and I started uni, and also at the same time I started to work at a office as an IT developer. That's what I studied, that was my field of study before.
Right, okay.
And at work, I noticed the lifestyle that was waiting for me if I kept, if I walked that road instead of try to go for my dream. So like, it's hard as a 17 or 18, whatever, to figure out what your life is going to look like. But then if you go in the places where people are that chose that lifestyle and you see who, what they are, you can understand if you like that or if you don't.
Absolutely.
So what did you do after?
So basically I think with my parents, we kind of decided that I should still finish uni, like anyway, at least so I have my degree and my backup and that kind of thing. And at that point, it was sort of like, I do kind of want to try and see if I can get into this sort of filmmaking sort of business. And my parents, they said, okay, that's cool. You don't have to have a academic or like career in like a typical sort of job. And they were like, they supported me on that. But they said like, get the degree first. Like don't get too excited and just try and go off and do random shit when you're like 18, 19. So I said, okay, fine. So, I did my degree, I completed it. And to be honest, I think for me, it was one of those things where when you look back, everything, it's very cliche, like everything happening for a reason, all that stuff. But I think my uni kind of decisions and my career in that sense was very, I don't know, it was almost like fate, because I ended up doing a degree which the lecture hours were quite low, and I moved away from home, and I had a lot of free time, like, because I've never been a study kind of guy. I don't study very much.
But you excel anyhow. You're that person.
I tried to. So like I had a lot of free time, and obviously those were the same years in which my YouTube channel was slowly, like I was starting to make more regular content, and it gave me a lot of time to work on content and to experiment with stuff and that kind of thing.
Have you ever thought of making like films but based on Final Fantasy? Like there's this friend of mine, it's called Claudie McDoom. I don't know, maybe you saw him already.
I haven't, no.
It's this guy, this black guy that makes these short TikTok videos where he runs around cosplaying like Sora.
Oh, wait a minute. No, I have seen it. Okay, someone shared that with me. I remember now. Okay, yes.
Yeah, or he made a video called Final Fantasy in a Nutshell, where it's very fun. Stuff like that could be amazing. Like based on, like, make short films or stuff like that. Doesn't have to be funny. It has to be in your style, obviously. I don't know what your style is, but based on FF10.
It's true. I mean, film for me is one of those things where I'll skip ahead because the story's going to get too long. But basically, I did kind of get into the world of filmmaking. I worked with my uncle in Turkey. So after I graduated uni, I moved to Turkey, where my uncle, he works as a producer for like a small kind of production company that does mostly commercials and that kind of thing.
Oh, that's cool.
So between like 2014 and 2019, I worked like in the industry in Turkey.
Yeah.
And I started off with literally like nothing. I came in as just a guy who's interested in doing this stuff with an economics degree. So I didn't really fit the usual sort of mold for people that want to do this thing. And my uncle said to me, well, so what do you actually want to do? Like, you've come here and you want to kind of get into the industry. What do you want to do? And I said, well, to be honest, the goal is to hopefully like write and direct my own stuff maybe someday. But obviously that's an extremely long road. It's not, you can't just like roll up and say, that's what I want to do. I'm going to start tomorrow. Yeah. So I was like, maybe like from what I'd seen, people that shoot behind the scenes videos for like these productions, it's almost like having a VIP pass and being like a fly on the wall for the entire production.
Oh yeah, dude.
And that was perfect because like you get to use a camera. So you have the camera in your hand all day. You get to basically be wherever you want to be. No one asks you, what are you doing here? Why are you in this particular bit? No one really cares. You just go around and you can just basically be like a ghost on set and just see everything. And I was like, that's the perfect job for me because I think I can learn some stuff. So I started off doing backstage videos for commercial shoots, and I did that for about 2 years until I got like an opportunity to actually direct a TV commercial. And
that's cool.
And then from there, I did that sort of stuff, and there was like some other projects in between that I worked on.
So you got the chops, like you worked on professional stuff, dude.
I did, yeah. I mean, I never got to work on anything like narrative film-wise, so that's something that hopefully, like maybe someday in the future, I can go back to. But in terms of,
you could do that on YouTube, like yourself,
Absolutely, yeah. So, like my experience is more with commercials. I directed some episodes of a TV program that's like a more like factual technology-based one. I did some of that, but basically, like it's again that's a whole like other story. But in the end, I decided to transition to like YouTube as like a full-time thing. And I preferred like the independence and
dude, it's so funny because like sorry to interrupt, but
no,
dude, before I started my YouTube channel, my goal was always to make music for Fan Fantasy game. It's still that goal, but to legitimize my skills and improve at music, I started from I spent a year doing nothing but making music, like a sabbatical year. I dropped my day job and everything just to make music. And then in that year, at the end, at the cusp of that year, I discovered this website where you can sell music for advertisements. Like you make music, you upload it there, like jingles and stuff, and people who need it for their videos or advertisements, stuff like that, they can buy it.
Yeah.
And I sold my first piece of music there after like 8 months of composing music. So I was like, wow, in 8 months, I reached a point where people can buy, like, people buy my music for advertisements. That's great. And then after that, I pushed even more and I ended up working on trailer music. And I made music for movie trailers for stuff like, John Wick Chapter 2, with a friend of mine, or Avengers Endgame, or, stuff like that. But it's not like music for the films, it's music for the trailers, and it's essentially music for advertisements, True. So I'm just making music to convince people to go watch a movie. And it was great because like it taught me so fucking much. I was working for Hollywood clients, so they have the biggest expectations and stuff like in quality.
Sure.
And then that doesn't have anything to do with making music for Final Fantasy though. So eventually when I got to a point where I learned a lot, by working in that, I was like, okay, now I'm ready to, get my name noticed in the Final Fantasy community, or get my name noticed by people who like more orchestrated, more melodic, more story-driven music. So I started my YouTube channel by making a remix of The Landing from Final Fantasy VIII. That was my first YouTube channel. I published a remix where I put all the things I learned throughout my music journey in the past like 3 years at that point. And it took like, I think 190 hours to write that remix.
Wow.
Because it was the biggest orchestration I ever made. Obviously, reorchestrating Hamauzu Uematsu is fucking crazy, especially The Landing.
Yeah.
I did all that by ear. I don't know music theory. And it was insane. But it was also so rewarding because I was doing the thing that I love the most, orchestral music and Final Fantasy. Published the remix and everyone was like, oh my God, can you explain us how you wrote this? Like how you arranged this song because it's insane. And then I made a tutorial because I love to explain to people. I love to teach people about unconventional ways to do things in life. And I write music in an unconventional way. And I was like, yeah, sounds like fun. So I made a tutorial. That tutorial blew up like crazy. I made others. They blew up more. I rewrote Final Fantasy 15 music by ear and stuff, made a tutorial about that. And that became a thing. Like, so I became a guy who makes orchestral tutorials online on YouTube, but that changed my life. Like, gave me way more fulfillment than making music for traders did. Even though trader music is amazing, I met so many incredible friends there and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Being straight in contact with people who watch my videos and seeing the impact of making those tutorials and inspiring people to chase their dreams and stuff like that is much more fulfilling than making advertisement music for a Hollywood movie. So yeah, even I came from corporate advertising world in a way.
Yeah.
And now I ended up writing more story-driven music. And then after all that, I also decided to detach a little bit from the music tutorials thing, because I felt that even though people were really enjoying my tutorials, they were not there on the channel for my music. Like, they really didn't care about my music that much.
Mm-hmm.
They cared about, because the audience that created itself was the audience of composers who want to learn from me. But
sure.
that audience doesn't really care, doesn't see value in me publishing music. They see value in me explaining them how to make music. And I wanted to have a place where people could appreciate my love for video game music and my covers of video game music and stuff like that. So I started Moukala Music, which is now my main channel, which is where I do the reactions and stuff.
Yep.
And that started initially with me republishing all my covers there, remastering them and whatever. Mm-hmm. Then, because FSM Remake was coming out and I was like super hyped for, that whole year about it, I spent months making recreations of FSM Remake music before the game came out. So, like, for example, when Neil Pabon did the presentation at, I think it was E3, mm-hmm. where he was there with Itaze and he was explaining how the gameplay works. He was showing the combat system.
Right.
That was the first time we had footage of FSM Remake. It was like Cloud in the Midgar reactor or something, and it was like there was the bombing mission music playing while the game was playing, but Neil was talking over it. So you couldn't really hear exactly the music. And just like you were the only crazy guy to beat Anima with the Snowsphere Grid, I was the only crazy person who watched that video thousands of times to really listen to the music under Neil's voice.
Okay.
And I rewrote it 1-to-1 with my FL Studio program, which is what I used to orchestrate and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then I published that like months before FSM Remake got out. I was like, FSM Remake, Bombing Mission, recreated or whatever. And that blew up, obviously, because people were like, oh my God, what the fuck? And I did the same for the Mako Reactor Field and Mako Reactor Battle music. Maximilian Dude shared it, and he also listened to it on Twitch with his fans, and it was fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And someone even notified me that, I'm not sure if that's true, but someone sent me a notification on Twitter tagging me. They were like, oh my God, Alex, what the fuck? They posted your music. I'm like, what? And then when I clicked on it, the video was deleted.
Oh.
And the comments on Twitter under the deleted video was like, I cannot believe it that the Square Enix Japanese channel posted Alex Moukala's recreations by mistake. As if they were the real thing. Like, they posted FSM Remake, Mako Reactor music. And I was like, what? And I couldn't see it because it was deleted.
Yeah.
But people were commenting, those who saw it. So supposedly it happened that by mistake, the recreations were so on point that they thought it was the real one and they uploaded them on the official channel.
Damn, that's crazy.
So yeah, I had a phase where I kept on doing this and doing arrangements and stuff. And because of the hype for FSM Remake, obviously, it kind of blew up. Then I still, felt that people were not completely feeling my passion for video game music and for Final Fantasy. Because when you make video game covers, if you make them orchestral and stuff, you're essentially writing them on your computer and you're writing the notes of hundreds of instruments or whatever, You cannot play that thing live. You cannot play the whole orchestra live.
Sure.
So the problem is you cannot put your face in the video. You cannot show the passion you had through the process. People just hear the final product, but they have no idea what goes into it.
Yep.
And I was like, I saw that. When I see people like Family Jewels or, I don't know, Rashad DB who make like amazing metal covers of video game music on YouTube, they can play the guitar parts. They can show you how it's done. And you see them and you're like, wow, this is fucking amazing. You appreciate the music way more because you see what went through in the music. But for me, I cannot do it. So I was trying to find a way to make people... And I was also thinking like, wow, that sucks that I'm not getting the right attention because to my music because people cannot understand what's going on. And I was also thinking, people also don't understand fully what video game music has going for it sometimes, like people love it because they love to hear it in games, obviously, but they don't know that Final Fantasy X's battle theme has one of the craziest bass lines ever written in JRPG. Unless you're a musician, you're not going to notice that.
Absolutely, yeah.
I was like, one theme that I couldn't get out of my head was the Shadowbringers main theme, like from FF14. And I was like, people love this, but they don't know. Like, they love it, but they don't notice all the fucking amazing things there are to love in this track. Like, it should be way more loved. So I made the first music producer react video, which was also like recommended by a friend of mine who has a similar channel. I was like, hey, dude, I've been making reactions, and if you want to gather people who love a certain music style, reactions are great because you can teach them about the music and then they follow you and stuff. And I was like, okay, that's great. That will probably make people aware of me, but also I want to like people to notice all these details in the orchestration of video game music. So I made a video about the Shadowbringers main theme, where I was just being a nerd and talking about, wow, there's the chord progression here that is dark, but then when the Warrior of Light vanquishes the enemy, it becomes happy. And it's, it's just, I was explaining music theory concepts in a way that is like elementary and basic, but that shows how much care and love the composers put in the music.
I think it sounds to me like with this like React stuff, you kind of found the exact content that you actually wanted to make, in the sense of it combines a bit of that tutorial element where you're still teaching people about things.
Exactly.
But you get to demonstrate your passion. And I think for me, like what I didn't want to do before talking to you was literally try to watch every single video you ever made, find out everything about you, so that like I didn't want you to tell me what I already knew, if that makes sense. So like I haven't watched your videos extensively. I've watched maybe like 8 of them, 7, 8, something like
there's way too many. You don't want to watch all of them on.
So I saw like little bits and pieces of like stuff that you've made. And I think from my perspective, I think it's good for me to say that I'm musically illiterate. Like I don't know anything about music theory. I'm just one of those people that just listens to music and I'm like, oh, that's nice, or oh, that sucks. Like I don't really have
okay,
much
but
more.
I think everybody has the thing, like, even I'm not really big on music theory. Like, I don't really know, but I think everyone has the intuition inside to understand music.
I think you're right, yeah.
So when I make those videos, when I point out the stuff, I make sure to not only say, oh, this is a modulation to C major. And I not only say that, but I also I show you what it sounds like. So I say, this is a modulation, and then I play it, and you're like, oh,
I think with you, that's what I enjoyed about it, because like there was this like nice fusion of, there was stuff in there that I didn't understand. So you were like talking about stuff that I didn't understand, but from like the way you explain things and the examples that you show and all that kind of stuff, I could get a feeling for what you were talking about. And you got to demonstrate like your passion for it and how into it you are and all that kind of stuff. And I think when you bring together everything,
that is the way I learned personally. That's how my favorite teachers in school taught me and stuff. And I love teaching and I love people to understand things. So when I made the Shadowbringers video, initially it was like, it did slightly better than my covers based on my audience. Like my audience liked it slightly more. But then after like a couple of weeks or something, it just, the views went up to such an exponential factor that I've never seen. Like it just blew up out of nowhere. And YouTube started recommending it a lot, like to everybody. And some people like Dual Shockers and stuff like that, they wrote articles about the videos that I make. And I was like, whoa, what the fuck? There were lots of people who were like, oh my God, I cannot believe I've learned so much from this video. I was expecting just a music producer making faces while listening to music. but actually, like I've learned a lot, and I'm so glad. It's cool to see you getting excited, but also like I never noticed that this, that the choir is actually doing this and blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, oh, so this is a way to make people really, really appreciate this stuff. So I started making more and more, because video game music is lots of wonderful tracks that deserve more love. And then people also got to know me through that. And in these reaction videos, to explain concepts, I like to write short remixes. So I made a Kingdom Hearts video once, and I was like, hey, this Kingdom Hearts song sounds like Bloodborne. And if I just say that, you're like, no, it doesn't. Like what are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm not good. My immediate reaction is oh yes, that's definitely.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, what the fuck are you talking about? So I'm like, I know people are gonna react that way. So I'm gonna write I wrote a short remix of this track in Bloodborne style, keeping the melody the same, the chords the same, and stuff like that. So the face of the track the same. I just changed the orchestration and made it a bit slower and make it darker. But it's the same thing. And I play it after I say the phrase. So in the video, you have the Bloodborne remix starting there. And then people will go fucking crazy. They're like, whoa, really? It does sound like Bloodborne. And you frequently, they ask for a full version of those remixes.
Yeah.
So I noticed, wow, like, okay, when I make orchestral music and I give a certain context behind the music, like, oh, this is a Kingdom Hearts remix, it's not a Bloodborne or whatever, people really like it. And I tried then to make a video where I not only play the music, but I explain you how I made it. So FF8, The Landing, I made a video called what would Final Fantasy VIII remake music sound like? Yeah. And I was like, hey, I made my own interpretation of The Landing from Hamauzu Uematsu. Here's what I did. And I show you the process, like, well, I put this, I put that, and this, and that, blah, blah, blah. And then I played the whole track at the end.
Yep.
So I show you the whole recipe and my mindset going through the track and my passion for it, because I cannot contain myself when I talk about music.
Yeah.
And then after you went through that journey with me and you understand my process, you listen to the full product, and that's where people go like, what the fuck? And that created a much different reaction compared to just publishing the track without explanation.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's how I found your channel, by the way. The Final Fantasy VIII, what would the remake sound like?
Yeah,
that's the video. Yeah, that's the one they sent me, and I checked it out.
Yeah, there you go. So it's that cover has been on the internet for many years. I published it in 2015, but I didn't publish it in this way, where I showed you guys what went into it and stuff like that. So
I think it's just how you packaged it. I guess if you package it differently, and I think I would say probably with you is there's like I think a lot of it is like an energy thing. You radiate like this really genuine, like positive, passionate energy about what you do, and I think that really that grabs people, like because there's just I don't think there's that many people, especially like in the Final Fantasy video game music sphere, that do things the way that you do it, and I think that's definitely helped a lot of people. But what I want to talk about is like you were saying, like more recently, your channel and like especially on Twitter, it's gone absolutely nuts.
Oh, yeah,
like
that's
what is that? What I've never, like I said before, I've never experienced like an expert. I've always just been the slow and steady sort of tortoise guy that's just been kind of making his way through YouTube just like year by year. But what's it been like for you just to have this insane growth right now?
Well, here's the thing, like, dude, as I told you, I started the tutorial channel many years ago in 2015. And there it was very slow.
Yeah.
And I was doing crazy orchestrations, dude. And trying to get people to notice them and stuff like that. I was doing the crazy, like I wanted Square Enix to see my FF8, The Landing cover. So I spent 190 hours on it, Then I released it, and I wouldn't say no one cared. Like people did care, but not as much as they did when I repurposed it and published it today, like last 2 weeks ago. But before, I used to, put so much effort in making everything. Even the tutorials are super long because I want to talk about all the details about, what I want to teach. And then, on YouTube, I make a video where I explain in 10 minutes what I think about Shadowbringers. And it blows up. I made, my process was rewriting the entire song before and then making a 1 hour long video explaining how the song was made and then publishing the cover.
Yeah.
Hoping that people would appreciate the music and they would discover it and stuff. And it didn't really work out that much. Then I make this 10-minute video where Shadowbringers don't even rewrite the song. I just write the chords and show how it worked. And it blows up. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like all the effort I've been putting.
Yeah,
was for naught.
I know exactly how you feel.
Yeah, so that's I had the humbling moment where I was like, okay, the way I've been doing things for like the past 3-4 years on the other channel has been kind of obsolete, and I'm stupid. And then I was like, okay, well, I probably need to master the art of making videos similar to my FF14 reaction then. And then I did, and then obviously when you find one thing that works, it's a good thing to do is to like become better at it. So I kept on making those, and then I made one about Persona 5 Last Surprise, where I made the video trying to keep it short and more concise and more digestible. So instead of like 15 minutes, it was 6.
Yep.
Which means I edited the shit out of that video, dude.
Yeah.
Like the shit. And also like there's so much more shock value in the video. Like I'm obviously being myself, but to an extreme. I'm dancing to Persona music and stuff like that, blah, blah. And also after shooting the reaction, I shoot other videos where I explained certain things a bit better and I glued them together. And people went fucking mental. Like, oh my God, and it reached like a crazy level of views in 24 hours.
Yeah.
And then it just, right now it's like 600,000, I think. So
wow.
I was like, okay, I need to make more like this. Well, on Twitter, Twitter is a different game. People treat Twitter like a surrogate child of their YouTube channel. Like it's not. Like it's a different entity. It's like a different person. Twitter, you cannot just publish your YouTube links on Twitter. You cannot just say, hey, I'm live on Twitch, and that's it.
Yeah.
If you want to become like famous on Twitter, you need to do something on Twitter that is internal to Twitter, so that people then share it or retweet it, and they retweet the links to your profile. Because social medias anyway, they don't like when you link to other websites. They like your content to lead people to spend more time on the social media itself.
Absolutely.
And I did not really plan this at all, but one day I got a bass. I like bass. I'm not so great at playing it, but I moved to Prague. I have a house here that has been for a while, so I started to like nest and buy instruments. And I bought this beautiful jazz bass. When I got it, I was so blown away by the sound. And I was like, whoa. And I recorded a quick idea of like a Daft Punk song playing it on bass. I shared it. At the time, I didn't have so many followers or whatever, but loads of people found it and retweeted it. They loved it. I don't know why, honestly. I didn't understand. It was just me playing bass, Daft Punk. Maybe they like Daft Punk. Then I heard Daft Punk like that. Okay, whatever. And and I play bass. And one day I just got this idea for a funky riff to play over a EDM remix of Giorno's theme from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Like I wrote this, like was 30 seconds short dance remix. And then I was like, wow, this dance remix would be so good if I played like a funky bass line on it.
Right.
And that funky bass line took me days. Like it took probably a week to learn because I'm not good at bass. And even though it was 15 seconds, it was weird to play. It was complex. And I learned, I was obsessed. I don't know why. I was just obsessed with the idea of like learning this funky bass line and playing it over that dance remix that I made. And so I spent a week learning it. And then I took the camera. I was like, well, people love the Daft Punk one. I'm going to do one for JoJo. I wore one of my shirts. I wore my necklace that I wear every time. I was just dressing like I dress when I go around town. And it's just me playing 15 seconds of like funky bass line over Giorno's theme. I published it. It went fucking crazy. Like the day after, it had like 30,000 likes and like 5,000 retweets.
That's insane.
Yeah, like I think I didn't understand what was going on. Like I think someone very relevant must have seen it and they retweeted it, and then everyone started to retweet it. And I found out that even like some of the people I follow, like musicians, like Little V Mills, is a great guy who makes covers on YouTube. He shared it on his Twitter, and like because it's internal to Twitter, it linked back to my profile.
Right. Okay.
And then loads of people followed. Loads of people commented. I was like, what the fuck is going on? So I'm like, okay, when I know that when something blows up like that, I should probably keep on doing it. And I love to play bass anyway. Yeah. And I think people were probably drawn by the fact that, like, on Twitter, the videos don't really, like, the videos go on autoplay usually when you scroll your Twitter timeline. Yeah. But you don't have the volume first. True. You know, you don't have it unless you click on the video. Yeah. So what probably compelled people to watch the video was me. Like, absolutely, yeah. Because of I was wearing this shirt that I like. It's just a shirt that I like. And it has a bit of a V-neck. And I opened it a bit more than normal because I was like, oh, what the fuck? I like to wear it this way. It's stylish and it shows the necklace that one of my friends made for me. This necklace that is like a guitar jack. And it's very rare. No one has it except for her. She makes this by hand. And I was like, I'm going to wear it proudly. I love it. Yeah. So I had this fancy shirt, whatever. I had the necklace and I'm playing bass and I'm vibing with it because I love the song. I'm like, finally, I learned it. Fuck yes. And I was just head bopping and vibing. Yeah. And so people saw this dude bopping and it said like Giorno's theme or something like, what the fuck? And I click on the volume and then the bass like explodes because I made the bass so loud in the mix. And so if you listen to it on the phone or you're listening to it on a computer or whatever, you're going to hear the bass no matter where. And people just fucking lost it because they don't really, there aren't loads of people make funky covers.
Yeah, I agree.
And if they are, they're not making fucking covers of anime video game stuff. I don't think there's anyone doing that.
Yeah, and they don't do it with those kind of shirts with the V-necks and the hats.
Yeah, exactly.
And all that kind of,
So
I mean, it's different. That's one of the things I definitely noticed as well. I think like I had a few people just asking me like, why don't you ask him about like his sense of style and that kind of stuff? So people notice these things because like even though okay you're a musician, you know it should really be about the music. Well, not really. I mean you're a person. You've got your own thing going on. I think people have also definitely really like just gravitated to you as a person. I think they like your style. They like the way you approach things, and I think that's got to be why it's also like blowing up so much as well. I mean it's definitely
I think like the thing that the funny thing is that the style. I've always been weird about this in a way. Like I grew up playing Final Fantasy games where every character has its own character design, and dude, like some character designs are so weird. Like Tidus, it's so weird, but it's so unique also. Auron, like you in the same game, you have Tidus, Auron, and you have Waka and Kimari, and they look all from completely different worlds.
Absolutely.
And I always love this idea that Final Fantasy characters have their own style, like a very significant style. And I was like, why do we all have to dress the same way in real life? Why can we not be like Nomura that puts 5,000 bells on her dress, you know? And I always grew up wanting to dress a bit differently, but I don't really have a good fashion sense. And especially as a kid, I didn't really have a good fashion sense. I just saw the Turks on FS7 wearing like jackets and black shirts, and I bought a black jacket, black shirt or whatever, and I put that to feel like a Turk or something.
Yeah.
But then a good friend of mine has a better fashion sense than me, saw it, and he's like, dude, I see what you're doing, but it needs a bit of work there. So he gave me a few advice, and he always tried to like make me look a certain way, but I always told him, no, I want to wear this. I don't want to, you know. So I ended up buying whatever clothes that I loved, but he helped me understand fashion a bit more and helped me understand matching colors, matching this, matching that. And then in the end, I kept on doing my weird fucking style. So when he sees me, he's like, I cannot believe you're wearing this. But it's me, and I love it. And that's how I dress. That's how I wear clothes in real life too. Yeah. I don't know if I have a crazy fashion style, but the thing that I do have is like pride for myself. And probably that's the thing that people like, because it's very validating to see someone that you admire in something. Like people admire my fashion. If someone admire my fashions or whatever, or my bass skills or my music producer skills, and then they also hear me say, hey, this favorite song of yours is a fucking legendary tune. Like, I don't know. Final Fantasy 13-2 music is fucking amazing. And if you're someone who loves that music and you also like my style, you just feel an incredible rush of validation.
Absolutely.
So you feel, oh my God, I cannot believe like, you know, a person like this loves the same nerdy shit that I do.
Yeah.
So maybe it's that. Like maybe it's a sense of like I like the idea of my work making people feel less alone and feel understood and validated. So maybe it's that.
I think a lot of it's about connection as well. I think especially like with my own life, it's always been interesting. I tell people a lot. Like in my own real life, I never grew up with any like Final Fantasy fans. I don't know any in real life. Like basically zero. And so like I don't. For me, it's been a bit hard to kind of who is and who isn't. Like when you're out and about in the world, you don't really assume that anyone that you meet is going to be into Final Fantasy. It's one of those things. And I think like depending on like people's styles and like the way they conduct themselves and that kind of thing.
You're never gonna think that.
No, that's what I mean. Like so when I see you there, like you know, with all this funky stuff, and then you got like the VV plush in the corner. It's like, wait a minute, this guy, like really? like if I saw this guy on the street, I'd be like, I'd be embarrassed to ask if he's into Final Fantasy.
Yeah, dude.
It turns out that he is, right?
I get it a lot, and actually, like sometimes I like I'm so sad that many dresses or shirts or stuff like that about the games that I love don't have a design that I like, you know, because if they did, I would wear those. Like, give me a fancy jacket with the Seed logo from Final Fantasy VIII, I'm gonna wear that shit, you know?
Yeah.
And I used to do that, by the way, but then as my style got better, I stopped. But I did make friends with people because either I was wearing a FF shirt or they were, and I was like, whoa, that's a Final Fantasy shirt. That's amazing, you know, or whatever. Yeah. I have a shirt that is about Kingdom Hearts, and I fucking love it because it's so good. It's beautiful. And that one, I wear it all the fucking time. But this thing about people not guessing that I'm a nerd, I get that. definitely. And also like with girls, dude, when I go out on a date or whatever, they never guess that I'm a nerd. Like I was out on a date once, and I'm a, you know, I'm not shy. I'm a pretty confident person. I'm stupid, but I'm confident and stuff.
Yeah.
And because of the charisma or whatever, the girl could, like, she didn't think I was a nerd at all, and she let it escape by her mouth that she plays World of Warcraft by mistake. And after that, she was like, "Oh no, sorry, I shouldn't have said that." I'm like, what? Like, wait, you play World of Warcraft? And she's like, "Yeah, why?" And I told them I'm a fucking massive nerd, and we started talking about video games, and it was, you know, super fun. And so I think it's always good to ask, but sometimes I also get in reverse where, I don't know, there's like my girlfriend right now. When she met me, she did not expect me to be a nerd at all, too. And when I told her, she was kind of, what? You know, like, no, you're just joking. There's no way. And I'm like, no, I'm serious. You know, just, and she is slowly learning to accept this thing about me. But you'd be surprised how many, you know, non-nerdy looking persons are huge nerds. Like, especially in London, dude. Like,
I agree, yeah.
I have so many friends like that. So it's good. I think it's good to expose yourself, because that is also the way I met my best friend. Like my very best friend, we were in class. We were 14 or something. And I looked nerdy when I was 14. He did not. He was wearing like metal clothes and super, you know, aggressive and whatever. And one day I catch him drawing a keyblade on a piece of paper from the Mars. I'm like, yo, is that a keyblade? And he lost his whole frame of being the tough guy because I saw he's a nerd. And he's like, yes, it's a Keyblade. Why are you asking? And I'm like, whoa, I fucking love that game. And then we became best friends.
That's brilliant. I mean, for me, like I said, like growing up, it's probably cultural as well. I mean, like, let's say if I use like Turkish culture as an example, like all of my cousins and all those guys, like the only video games that really got played like in and around like my age group and my cousin stuff was basically like FIFA and like Call of Duty and that kind of stuff. So for them, like gaming was just about that. And like Final Fantasy and stuff. I mean, it was the same in school. A lot of my closest friends were like Muslims and like they're from like Pakistan and that kind of thing. And I think, again, like people like, especially where I grew up, people that grew up in like Islamic homes and that kind of thing, they weren't really playing quote unquote nerdy games. Again, like the only games they'd really play were like Pro Evo, FIFA, Call of Duty and that kind of stuff. So I always just grew up not really having many people around me that I could have, you know, that sort of conversation with. And I literally, like, this is the extent to which I tried to get people to appreciate Final Fantasy X was I had two friends in Turkey that they were like my best friends. And I used to always spend about 6 weeks in Turkey in the summers, like to be like with my family and friends and stuff out there. And I literally said to them, look, there's this epic game called Final Fantasy X that you guys really just have to play. And they're like, no, like we're not interested. We're not going to play. And I was like, okay, fine. Sit with me. The story is so good. Let me play through the game and I'll literally translate the game for you as it happens.
Wow.
So that you can understand what's going on. And it still didn't work. Like literally like after like 8 hours or something, like 2 or 3 sessions, they were like, yeah, okay, like whatever. Let's go to the beach and whatever. So I was like, fine, okay. But for me, it's always been tough. Like I literally do not have like a real life person that I see regularly that's into Final Fantasy. It just never happened.
I think it's man, I cannot think of what my life would have been without that instead. Like I was in this is the same in Italy too. Like 90% of people only play FIFA and Call of Duty. Like I think it's a thing everywhere, to be honest.
Probably, yeah. I would say so.
I was very lucky to meet like 2 or 3 friends that were super nerdy, and I spent all my childhood with them playing video games. And as I grew up, I discovered more and more because of like forums and stuff like that. I met people. Initially, it was just, you know, friends on the internet because you're little. But then when you grow up, you kind of can move, you can travel and stuff like that. And with some of them, I went to like conferences like Comic-Con and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's where you meet like-minded people. So there's also in London, dude, if I lived in London, I would just take you out to certain places. There's a bar that has like arcades and gaming consoles and stuff. You can go there. There's loads of nerds who go there. I don't remember the name of the place, but it's like Nerd Island essentially. Or, you know, like I think it's true that it's so rare to meet other nerds in life because nerds are a minority, definitely. And especially, you know, us nerds usually, like some of us, we love to go outside and stuff, but many don't. So it's even rare like to meet them because you wouldn't meet them in public.
Exactly. Yeah, I would agree with that.
But if you go to like conventions, you go to tournaments, you go to events and to certain bars and places, you're going to meet a lot.
Yeah.
So
I mean, for me, it was through YouTube. It was also interesting because I've always been a very private person, even on like my like personal Instagram. Well, it's not really a personal. Even my Instagram is just called Dansg08. I don't have like my own named personal Instagram, like publicly available and that kind of thing. That's always been my sort of philosophy about these things. It's just who I am. But I mean, like for the first, I think until 2012, so until 4 years after I made my channel, I didn't even have a Twitter. It was just my YouTube and that was it. No one ever saw my face until 2012 as well. And I didn't have an Instagram until 2018. So for a long time, I sort of had this sort of, I didn't want to
put yourself out there.
Yeah, expose myself in that sort of way.
Yeah,
I think for me also, it was also, again, because I don't know people from this world like in real life, and like people don't understand what it means to sort of play video games on YouTube and have people watch them. People have like misconceptions about it, and you kind you kind of fall into that trap and you sort of think it's true. So for me, for example, I upload video games. It's that simple. And when you just look at, let's say, a comment section of a video, you have no idea who these people really are. Like, they could be a bunch of 10-year-olds, they could be 12-year-olds, they could be 50-year-olds. Like, you don't know who they are like, almost at all. And I think I had like my own, I misunderstood my own audience and who they were. And, because if I was to tell people what I do, they'd probably, they're like, it's probably just, a bunch of kids on their iPads just watching random sort of video game stuff. And I kind of believe that. I was like, well, even if I do have an audience, it's unlikely to be people that I'd really probably connect with. Like, they're probably going to be like kids and,
And then instead, like, did you find out what they're like?
Absolutely, yeah. So in like 2018 for me was a turning point of that stuff. So, over time, once I started to use Twitter and all that kind of stuff, I got to sort of meet my audience a little bit more. But the explosion really came when I started my Instagram page. And I also started the 24/7 stream on my channel. I don't know if you've ever come across it or you've seen it before.
I did, I think.
Yeah, so I created a 24/7 Final Fantasy stream on my channel. And basically the goal for that was obviously to try and create like a community that could constantly be like on the channel, chatting about Final Fantasy, making friends and all that kind of stuff. But again, I pretty much had no idea what I was going to encounter in that chat room. It could have been, again, like a bunch of like kids just trolling around, a bunch of bots, or just like a bunch of just random shit, and it was going to completely fail. And to my surprise, like, it ended up being this amazing community, and I've met probably by this stage like hundreds of people now that have come through there that I've got to talk to personally, and I've got to know. And it turns out I was completely wrong about like who I thought was watching my channel, and there were just so many cool people that I really loved getting to know. I've become friends with, I've met in real life.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like, for
me, that was crazy.
I think when you put yourself out there, that's what happens. Like, you obviously you can attract also the attention of like trolls or whatever, but that's a minority. Like, for the most part, you attract people like you. Like, the reason why you're making your content anyway is for people like you, for people who are interested in the stuff you're interested in. So you're gonna, like, generally speaking, as a content creator, you're gonna attract people that are like you. I'm a very positive person. Philosophical sometimes, and I love music. People who are not like that probably are not going to watch my content, but if they do, they're going to skip it. But people who do engage with me tend to be kind of like me. So there's this like myth that Twitter is like this negative page that when you get there you get depressed or whatever. Lots of people complain about it. I don't see that because I don't engage in that, and thus my audience doesn't either. And I just think that it's good to put yourself out there. There's nothing to hide if you think you're doing something good, you know? Yeah. And I'm so glad that you get in touch with your audience, because that's the thing that keeps nerds isolated. They just don't get themselves out there. They don't express their love for stuff because they think it's not, how to say, like it's not a good thing to like video games, but it is, There's plenty of people who do. It's great to live. Like, to fantasize is a great thing. Living in reality is also important, obviously. But being able to dream about stuff that is not real is also very important, because that can teach you about, like, I cannot even begin to tell you how many life lessons Final Fantasy taught me.
For sure.
And it's a fantasy game.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
So Yeah, I think like the thing that nerds should do is just get a bit more open and unashamed about their passions. Also, because when someone criticizes you, like, oh, you play video games, what the fuck, you're wasting your time. And then what they do after, they go on Netflix, just watch, I don't know, 20 hours of TV series that is not fantasy, it's realistic, and they feel accomplished because that's realistic. No, it's still a fucking fantasy. It's like watching porn. It didn't really happen, you know? So you can say, oh, but it was real people. Well, it did not happen. You didn't experience that. Your mind was transported to a different scenario for some time, and you feel like your life has been enriched with the experiences of another fictional human being.
Mm-hmm.
That is what happens, and that's great. It's amazing. And it's the same thing that happens in games, and I would say it happens even more in games, because not only you are passively watching, you are playing the role of the person. You are experiencing this world. Games now are at the point where you really feel immersed. Have you ever tried Half-Life Alyx on VR?
I haven't, but I've heard. I don't have a VR system, but I've heard some amazing things about it. I'd love to try it.
Yeah, dude. Like when you try that, that's the best example. When you try that thing, if you play for like 10 minutes, when you take off the helmet, you're gonna feel so weird because you're like, wait, was there you forgot? Like it's so immersive and it's so good that you forget that there's a real world outside of the VR helmet. That you get there. When you take it off, you're like, what the fuck? Wait, no, that wasn't the real world. So video games can lead you to immerse even more in the fictional lives of other human beings and whatever. So I don't think they should be judged. They're just a piece of art to one of the maximum extent that art has ever been.
I think from my side, it's a bit of a cultural and a generational thing. So I think from like this period in history onwards, like more parents, let's say, are going to be gamers, for example.
Oh yeah.
And so this whole kind of stigma about video games, they're a waste of time. They're silly. Like, you shouldn't be playing them as an adult and all this kind of stuff. So like I get, let's say, I tell people, some of my older family members, let's say, about YouTube and all that stuff. And they know that I play games. They're like, oh, what a hard life. You play games for a living. Oh, boo-hoo. And it's like, it's not like that, man. Like, you can't explain it to them because they just won't understand. And it's like,
same with my girlfriend is kind of like that too. Like I sometimes stream on Twitch. There was a time I was playing Persona 5 Royale, and it's a huge game. And I did I did 3 massive streams, and she obviously was not glad about that. It's like, well, why are you doing that? I'm like, well, it's work. Yeah, it's work. What are you talking about? You're playing games. I'm like, yeah, but you know how hard it is to play for 9 hours. And also, I got this amount of dollars in donations. She's like, what? They paid you for playing games? And I was like, I had to explain her. Yeah, there's actually people who, donate because you're making their days better and stuff. And it's great. And she's like, whoa, you made more money than I do in a day. And
exactly.
That's usually what they realize when you talk about the money. Sadly.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was going to say. I mean, from my own community and stuff, when I talk about this stuff, people that don't understand it, they see it as like a little bit of, that's not a real job. You're just doing this, you're doing that. And then when the topic comes to money, and it's like, well, I don't tell people how much money I make, but I make it clear that I earn enough to, I earn almost as much as any other person doing any other job.
That's where they go, oh shit, I want to do it too.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, wait a minute, how does that work? So how do you earn money on YouTube?
Yeah,
how does
obviously.
and then all of that begins, and then suddenly they're all interested.
Is when you tell, it's, the problem is that, everybody wants to go to heaven, but no one wants to die, Nobody wants to die. Like if you tell them, okay, you want to be a streamer or whatever, okay, you have to do this, you have to do that, blah, blah, you have to edit videos, you have to play this certain amount of, you tell them all the drudgery that is behind it, they're like, oh no, I don't want to do that.
Exactly. Yeah,
and you're like, well, that's why it's a job,
Exactly. You have to treat it like one. I mean, I tried for a very long time to sort of have this 100%, this is just a hobby that I'm earning money from kind of approach. And I think that only gets you so far. Like after a time, if you truly want to, as an adult, if you want to make sure you have a steady stream of income, you have career aspirations, you hope to grow in certain ways, you want to be independent financially and all that kind of stuff, you have to have an element of just thinking about business and making sure you're keeping yourself, in a good position.
Even though we're talking about games, and when you also think about the fact that okay, games, it's a game, right? Well, it's also the collective work of so many freaking talented artists and developers and stuff like that. It's work also.
Of course.
Entertainment is not. This is why, it saddens me to see sometimes where, I don't know, a YouTuber or a content creator may express his opinions about some current event like BLM or whatever, and people go, "Hey, no, you're not allowed to talk about this. You're just a content creator." Like, no, like I'm a fucking human being, and you know,
exactly.
like entertainment is not just like it's necessary first. You know, life without entertainment would be terrible. But just because it's entertainment doesn't mean you shouldn't take it seriously. Because if we don't take it seriously, then all this stuff doesn't get made. You know?
Absolutely, yeah.
I wonder though, like what we will stigmatize when we're like 40 and our kids are like 12 or I don't know.
I don't know, man. It's a good question. I don't think I want to think about that right now. It's too much.
Yeah.
I just hope we get to a place where I think right now what I tend to say to people is like what I see like on the internet and like in the world and all that kind of stuff. I think humanity and like technology and everything has just grown so fast that we're in this sort of like moody teenager phase of like humanity where like we just have more than we can handle right now. Just like there's just so much going on and we can't all fully sort of process and function with it and deal with it as we should. And I feel like hopefully like we're going to eventually reach a stage where we, you know, as a collective, we have a bit more experience and wisdom.
Oh
and
man,
like all of this craziness starts to sort of die
I would
down.
love that too. I'm just wondering, that's possible because like this transcends what humans, like the internet, the level of information we have, just like the level of sugar we have in our diets now, transcends the understanding of human beings. Like we should not be able to just hop on, I don't know, a porn website and suddenly have an infinite choice of, you know, sexual, you know, mates that we mate with. Or we cannot, we should not be able to talk to more than 100 people in our lives. And, you know, you hop on Twitter, you have thousands of people you can communicate with.
Yeah.
Well, the human mind can only memorize around like I think 120 or something, like tribes. That's that. We're meant to, you know, work with those variables. So so those variables. So I wonder if we're ever going to get to the point where we can tame the beast that is technology. Like the only way I can think is what Elon Musk is doing with the Neuralink. Like if we ourselves merge with technology in some way, and then our capabilities of our brains and stuff improve. Because as we are right now, we're not probably able to.
I wouldn't say so. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think for me, it's more of like a general sort of approach to life. I mean, I think an example would be, let's say, if you look at like rates of smoking in third world countries versus well-developed countries. So like Turkey versus the UK is a great example for me. Like Turkey is still in a lot of ways a developing nation. And everyone in Turkey smokes, like because first of all, like when it first gets introduced, people just ignorant. They don't know what the downsides of smoking are, so everyone just smokes. Then, like they say, 20 years goes by, 30 years goes by, and then suddenly, like, wait a minute, people are dying way more than they should.
Yeah, I see your point.
So yeah, and then afterwards, people like, let's say, you know, you have parents that smoke, and you're like, my parents are idiots. Why are they smoking? And then you're like, I'm not going to smoke. And then you have a generation where there's less kids smoking, and then their kids are going to smoke even less. So suddenly you've made this sort of transition from like realizing that something's harmful and kind of phasing it out of your life kind of thing. And I'm just hoping that like some aspects of technology, like some of the shitter sides of technology and what it's given us, I'm just hoping that over time we're going to sort of realize how harmful it is and counterproductive it is.
Actually, you have a point. Yeah, you have a point. Yeah, we do operate like that. Well, I hope the same as well, you know. And I think people are slowly getting better at that.
I think we just got to potentially just try our best to lead by example. So like you're saying, let's say your Twitter, based on what I've seen of your Twitter, it seems like a positive place. I don't seem to see a lot of like toxic, based on your follower size and like how much interaction you get. It seems like a great place to be. Now, if you were a guy that was constantly sort of flaming other people and starting fights and being like dramatic,
it wouldn't be like that.
Then you're just going to get tons of people doing the same shit, and like people are going to say, you know, this is just how it is on the platform. And so I think if people like, you know, people that do have influence, they lead by example in these areas. People are just more accepting towards everyone, and you know, all that kind of thing.
That's true.
Think over time, surely it's got to get better.
One thing is that as content creators, one thing I notice is that negativity, sadly, is way more noisy.
100%.
So if you're negative, like you get for better or for worse, you get more attention. So I would understand why certain content creators revolve around drama, and I'm quite sure that some of them do that just as a professional facade.
I agree. I agree.
So I'm quite sure that is happening. And maybe, yes, content creators definitely have a big responsibility in educating the communities on how to use the internet.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I think humans need to learn how to not dehumanize.
Yeah.
For example, BLM. I had the experience as a black person. I had the experience of, sadly, with BLM, discovering that some, like a very small minority of, I don't know, some artists that I followed. Like there's this art, I'm not going to name them because I don't want to cause drama or anything. And I don't even know like it's 100% confirmed or not. Mm-hmm. But this artist that I followed that was drawing like anime characters. And I love fan arts a lot. And I love artists. I love anime. I love video games. This artist was drawing those. Mm-hmm. When BLM happened, this person shared on their Twitter some anti-BLM stuff and some racist stuff as well.
Wow.
And me as a black person, I've been following this person for years, always loved their stuff. And suddenly, I find that. And someone shared, all the screenshots and stuff like, oh, delete, cancel this person because this person is racist. I was like, okay, I cannot, I don't really feel like following this person anymore. And I don't feel like supporting them anymore. Mm-hmm. But I do not understand the aftermath of what happened. What happened after this person got canceled or some people awake to the fact that this person is racist is loads of people started insulting this person.
Right.
Being like, oh, you're racist and you're stupid. And whatever, I wouldn't expect anything good out of someone that draws anime characters for a living. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like, and this suddenly, even for the people who loved their work the day before, then the work became terrible.
Yeah.
And the person became terrible. Everything they do is like shit. And they insulted not only this person, but everyone who makes anime characters. And I'm like, no, that's not correct. Like this, it's okay to say, I don't support this person anymore. I don't want to follow their art. But you cannot just decide suddenly that this person is not worth of human respect.
Yeah.
Just because you disagree on something that, sadly, it's very heavy, obviously. Like racism is terrible. Mm-hmm. But they're still a human. They're just a human that happens to have a opinion that is a bit rotten, in my opinion. Yeah. But hey, they're still a person. That doesn't mean that the work needs to be insulted now. The same happened with J.K. Rowling when she said so many sad things about trans people, which I do not agree at all. It's surprising that someone like J.K. Rowling would say those things. It seems like she's not able to uphold the lessons that she wrote about in her Harry Potter books.
I agree, yeah.
It's very sad to see that, obviously. I'm not like, okay, that's a bit disgusting. But she's still a person, so I'm not going to go and troll every fucking post she makes. Yeah. Even if I'm like pro-trans. I love trans people. But that doesn't mean that now I need to dehumanize J.K. Rowling and treat her like she doesn't deserve any respect for anything at all.
That's what I mean. I think it's a bit of a trying to fight fire with fire situation. I just don't. Yeah. Ultimately, I just don't think that works. Like, shitty people are just going to be shitty people. And I think from what I see, like on the internet, one of the reasons why I've always remained sort of private and tried to not get involved with like, societal stuff and politics. I'll talk about that stuff with people I know and all that kind of stuff. That's fine. But I don't tend to share it like publicly.
Yeah, you can get backlash.
I think for more than backlash, I think when it comes to the internet and just like people you follow for like their content and stuff, I think it's very hard to build up a true picture of who you are to those people. And,
you can't.
And you can't really, it's very difficult to earn benefit of the doubt. So just as an example, let's just say you have a brother that you've grown up with your whole life and deep down that your brother's a good person. But let's just say politically, they think differently to you, right? Mm-hmm. Now, because that person's your brother and you've seen like the good sides of them, they could be a good person who has a shitty opinion or who is misguided about something or who's ignorant about something, and you can give them the benefit of the doubt. Obviously, there's very extreme examples where maybe you wouldn't, but let's just say, politically they don't agree with you. But I feel like on the internet, because you don't have that foundation of like really knowing that person and, having a complete picture of who they are, it's just so easy to completely cast them off just because of one thing they've said or one opinion they've had. And to me, it's like, I just want to play video games and just share my experience with the world, right?
But exactly,
I don't want people to kind of hate me just because of one shitty opinion I have, because it's absolutely certain that I have shitty opinions. If I listed every single opinion I have about everything,
absolutely everyone,
you're going to pick apart like 15 of them, and be like, what the fuck, man? Like, really?
Well, that's the same for everyone. But the problem is that people dehumanize. Like, that's
what I mean.
If people did not dehumanize and people understood, okay, my favorite content creators and stuff, they are humans, and as humans, they can, I don't know, maybe not be right all the time, or they can have some sides that are not, okay for me.
Mm-hmm.
But that, people need to understand that doesn't make the whole human rotten.
That's what I mean. That to me is one of the challenges of the internet. That's where I think we need to do better.
I understand people who say, I'm not going to support this person anymore. I did the same, dude. Like the racist artist or,
of course,
or whatever, J.K. Rowling, I don't know if I'm going to support them.
Of course,
but to say that I don't enjoy their past work, or I don't enjoy their talent, or I don't appreciate certain facets of their personalities is a lie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people should learn. And this is something I love about video games, by the way. Like, lately we've been getting some very gray villains. I don't know if you played Final Fantasy 14.
No, I'm not a Final Fantasy 14 player, unfortunately.
Okay, I would recommend it to any Final Fantasy fan who's a grown up. Because the villains in Final Fantasy 14 are gray as fuck. Like, it's not like black and white. Mm-hmm. You, many times in the game, start thinking if you're not the villain.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that happens sometimes in games. And that expands, I believe, people's idea on what is wrong and what is right. Sometimes it's a simple matter of perspectives. Doesn't mean that you are a rightful, pure soul and the other is like deranged, putrid monster. Sometimes it just means you have different opinions, and I very rarely believe that people just want to cause pain.
Yeah,
like
I agree.
Many times conflict is born out of different perspectives, and sometimes some perspectives can cause a lot of pain, like racism.
Mm-hmm.
But I do not believe that people just wake up and be like, okay, today I want to cause pain. Maybe their mind is like fucked up, and they don't understand the pain they're causing with certain decisions. But I don't think they're like, today I want to be evil. It's just, I'm ignorant about this. I don't know how much pain I'm causing to people.
Yeah.
And if they obviously can learn and they can grow. And I've had people tell me, hey, Alex, I was racist before meeting you, and now after being with you for a bit, I changed my mind. You showed me. Like, I didn't even know this. I didn't know they were racist. Didn't know I changed their minds. I was just being myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you showed me that actually, there's nothing to hate about black people, and it was stupid to think that way. And people have sometimes to take a long time to get to that, to change their minds and stuff. And I find the best way to get someone to change their mind usually is to be patient with them. Mm-hmm. Like, show them, obviously, that, okay, what you did is fucked up or whatever, but also be patient, not dehumanize.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I mean, I think with that stuff, it's a lot of that stuff is about exposure. So like when it came to the whole like BLM stuff, again, I try to remain consistent with everything. So, if I don't post about one thing, then I don't post about anything, because I don't want to have the whole like, oh, well, you posted about this thing, but this thing's also happening. Why don't you post about this thing? Don't you care about this thing? It's like, no, it's like, I equally don't care about everything when it comes to social media. So like, you can criticize me for not posting about any of them, but like, don't say that I care about one thing more than the other and all that kind of stuff. But when it came to like BLM, like that was a bit of a, like I hadn't personally seen anything that crazy, like blow up that much on social media, like during my time on there. And I just wanted to say, like, just have like one little sort of kind of acknowledgement that this was happening. And just the fact that like from my own personal experience, that I was someone who was lucky to just grow up around a lot of cultures. And because of that, my life has been better for it. And it's one of my favorite things about like being able to meet new people. And when it comes to like YouTube and the community and all that kind of stuff, it is quite literally become my favorite thing. Is just there's just so many different people. Everyone's the same, but everyone's different. And I just absolutely love it. And like, you get into conversations with people about, it could be something really silly. Like I have a team of moderators for the stream, and we're all from like different parts of the world and different cultures and that kind of stuff. And you can like bring up a topic like, I don't know, what's weddings like in your culture? And you can talk about that for like an hour. and you learn so much like interesting stuff, like, oh, what's a wedding in Congo like, or what's a wedding in Finland like, and it's just like you hear all this weird like different stuff, and I always think you're better for it having had those kind of interactions and learn those kind of things with people.
Absolutely. I think you get amazing. More human. You get more human when you discover about different cultures. You start to understand how we're not so different, and you start to love more and stuff like that. It's good. That's where you get to not be able to dehumanize people anymore.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's why for me, it's like my kind of conclusion from all that kind of stuff has been like, well, to me, it really does just boil down to there's just shit people and there's good people. Like there's shit people of every single race,
yeah.
And there's great people of every single race, and it's just like, well, are you a shitty person or are you not?
Absolutely.
Like, to me, that's the only question that really matters to me. I don't really care about any like details that I'd find on a biography about who you are. It's just like,
yeah,
the physical stuff, it doesn't really matter to me. It's just like, are you a good person or are you not? And anyone can be a good person, anyone can be a crap person, So
I think we're far better. Like we're far better today than to understand this than we were, I don't know, 30 years ago or 50 years ago or 100 years ago.
I would agree, yeah.
So I wanna, like, I'm positive. People say, oh, this is fucked up. I'm like,
yeah, same.
Like when the PS4 did the BLM theme, the Sony, and they published it on Twitter, and everyone was complaining on the comments.
Right.
Because there were lots of racist people complaining about the BLM theme.
Right, okay.
I'm like, okay, this is true. There's lots of people who still need to learn, and lots of people who, don't have the right mind.
Mm-hmm.
But also, we got a freaking BLM theme. Like, that's
yeah.
We are so much better than we were like 20 years ago or 50 years ago. So I'm so positive.
Yeah, I think we're gonna get there over time. Hopefully, I mean, like I say, to me, this feels a bit like growing pains, and I think eventually we're gonna get better.
It's leveling up. We're gonna get to 99 one day.
Exactly. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's bring it back to music a little bit. We went off on a tangent.
Yeah,
but it was fun. Okay, so one thing I do want to ask, like a thing about your channel is, you've talked about how like the covers and all that, the reactions, the covers, and all that kind of stuff is something that's really like propelled your channel and stuff. But obviously, as a musician, your goal is ultimately to be known for stuff that you've created yourself. So how are you now trying to be like, okay, like I'm a guy that does all the Final Fantasy stuff, but hey, look, I can make these tracks that are completely my own original works, and you should check this out as well, and that kind of stuff.
I can definitely write some very cool originals, and that was what I did for the most of my career.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to say, like, one of the things that lit my eyes the most about the idea of composing music was Dissidia. I don't know if did you play Dissidia?
No, I didn't. Dissidia is not one of the ones I've tried.
Okay, so what they did in Final Fantasy Dissidia from the original one is they had Takeharu Ishimoto, the composer for Crisis Core and stuff, rearrange the music from the entire series, because you had characters from Final Fantasy 1 till I think it was 10 back then, or 12. And he rearranged the music and he made it way more energetic and stuff. And he took even songs that were so old, like from the 90s or 80s or whatever, and he turned them into these amazing masterpieces. I was like, whoa. I'm blown away by the idea of how you can evolve a piece of music and how you can rearrange it and turn it into something completely different. And if they ask me, hey, okay, choose this. You can either become an arranger on Final Fantasy projects or have your own career, make your own music, but not for Final Fantasy. I will definitely pick the Final Fantasy arranger. I don't feel like I need to write full original music. I can do that, and I have loads of fun doing that. There's one time I wrote this song that was based on a Magic the Gathering card. I don't know if you play Magic the Gathering.
Oh, no.
But in the card game, essentially, there's like many different characters, and there's a lore that is fucking huge.
Okay.
There's even books written about it. And the cards have some text under that tells the story of that card specifically. And some characters have multiple cards, and you can tell their stories while reading all the cards. And I was like, wow, this one character has such an amazing story. And I was like, I wonder what, it would sound in music. So I wrote an original piece of music based on the story of this card, going through the whole chronology and whatever, which is crazy because she goes through a lot, And I wrote an original based on that. It's, in my opinion, it's a masterpiece. It's a very good piece of music. And what makes it even better is that it's based on a Magic the Gathering card.
Yeah.
And it's fun. I can do that. But if they ask me, hey, you can either do that forever or you can do Final Fantasy arrangements forever, I'm going to choose Final Fantasy arrangements. I'm like, Fucking love that shit. You know.
So have you been have you been approached by any companies at this stage, like asking, hey, like, you interested in working with us for this game?
Yeah, it did. Some it didn't go anywhere. Others I refused. Some, well, you know, I cannot speak about this stuff so much, but you know, it does, like, my things now do get the attention of companies sometimes.
Okay, yeah, that's the thing that I was curious about, because I know obviously like what your goal is and where you'd love to go. Obviously, that's got to be a stepping stone towards.
Yeah, but obviously, like, you have to write original music. Definitely, like, if you want to, also you have to be able to write original music if you want to compose for these companies. But one thing that is true is that even with my audience now, if I make an original piece, it's not going to get as much hype or attention as my covers.
Yeah,
simply because my audience is interested in video game music. One thing I could do, which I will do, definitely. I actually did it before. I wrote a sort of original piece for Sephiroth.
I listened to that one, actually.
Yeah, there's many references to different themes. There's a reference to like Genova and one to One Wing Ninja or whatever, but you know, the piece itself was an original piece. And I want to do that even more, like writing fully original tracks inspired by one character. Like, I don't know, I've write a theme for, I don't know, Zach or whatever. Yeah. You know, that would be fun.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, I think that's definitely something I'd love to hear.
Yeah, I'll probably do that. But yeah, I don't really have the need personally right now to legitimize my skills or my musical persona with originals. And I get loads of shit for that by like the people who follow me for my tutorials and stuff like that. They're like, oh, you know, you don't have an identity anymore. You know, you can just make covers. You're not capable. I'm like, yeah, I am. You know, if you want, you can listen to my originals. Yeah, they're not that many anymore because I've loved to make covers so much and remixes and arrangements. It's so fun for me. Yeah. But you know, if you go back a few months or whatever, you're gonna find originals. And my whole career, like making music for Avengers and Game Traders, did not happen because of covers. It happened because of originals. Exactly. But covers can also lead the way to such projects. There was a time where I was working on a proposal for a FF7 remake trailer music. Like Square got in touch with the label that I worked with. I don't know if it was Sony or Square. They got in touch with the label, the trailer I worked with in the past, and they asked me, hey, like they want a FF7 remake custom track that features the battle theme or whatever. And I was like, okay, good for you guys. And they're like, no, we're asking you because you're the guy who makes covers. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So you can get cool projects by making covers too. And I don't really need to, like, if I make originals, I like to make them for myself or, you know, not to gain my followers' approval. So that's why lately I haven't been doing that much. But definitely will make a series of originals based on video game characters and stuff in the future. Okay, yeah. I mean, that sounds exciting. At the moment, I think you found like a nice groove with what you're doing. And I think for now, it does seem wise to just keep doing what you're doing. You're clearly having a lot of fun with it as well. Yeah, for me, it's all about the fun, you know, and always, you know, also like I want my work, I make it personally for other people. Like I love, I don't know, making a Sonic remix in Hollywood orchestra style and then having people in the comment go, oh my God, I cried because it reminded me of my childhood and it made me think about, like, there was a guy who wrote a comment about, it made me think about the time that my mom put me a Sega Mega Drive and I played Sonic and she used all her savings or stuff and we were poor, but she gave me joy through Sonic. I'm like, wow. It's amazing that this song or arrangement I wrote brought you back to such a beautiful time and made you call your mom on the phone to thank her for buying you the, you know, that's great. So I obviously, my creative output is outward focused in a way. I want to, you know, do it for the people. But it's also, it makes me happy. I wouldn't do that if it didn't make me happy. Of course. You know? I mean, there's got to be both. I mean, you can't, I don't think you can sustain. I think for my own thing, the reason I've been able to do this so long is just because, you know, I just play the games that I want to play when I want to play them, the way I want to play them. You know, people don't tell me how to play games. They don't tell me how I should behave in videos or what I should say. And honestly, like if you force yourself, like I was talking about this with my chat on Twitch the other day. If you can force yourself to, I don't know, play a game that you know is popular and you can force yourself to have crazy as fuck reactions to stuff, even though you do, you know, you just exaggerate. You know that it's going to do much better on the internet and you're going to get way more followers and whatever. But at what cost? You know? Exactly.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm not interested in that. Like I'm okay with not being huge if that allows me to be happy. That also includes the idea for me to, for example, express my opinion on certain societal things. I don't do it so much, but certain times I feel like, hey, if maybe we should talk more about this stuff, or I don't know, talking about uncomfortable subjects or depression or shit like that, like, yeah, like maybe if you do that, you're not gonna get so much attention, and maybe some people are gonna unfollow you because like, depression, but I don't like, because I don't really care about being the number one with views and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
I have the freedom to do things my way, so that's why I have the freedom to like not do so many originals, but. Yeah, they will come for sure at some point.
I think the word is freedom for sure. I mean, that's one of the main reasons I transitioned to YouTube full time. That if you can build an audience doing things your way, that's the ultimate freedom. You can just then from there on, you can always just do whatever you like. I mean,
absolutely.
And in that sense, it's really like empowering. For you, I mean, you're more of a genuinely creative content creator. I'm just a guy who plays games, commentates over them. Sometimes I make like trivia, lore videos and stuff. But
that's very creative as well.
But I mean, I think for you especially, because yours is more of I think your identity and your persona is also a bigger part of your channel than mine is for mine. I think that's why it's better for you in that sense to really. In that sense, I think you've done a great job. Like you put enough of yourself out there. And you show that you're a human being. You've got your own views. You've got your own opinions about things. But it really is like about you just enjoying what you do and sharing it with the world. And it's not turned into this sort of, I'm gonna be this big influencer guy that's gonna try and have a say about everything and all that kind of stuff. So I think you found a really good balance.
I can't do that. First, I'm too stupid for that. And second, I don't want that. No.
Nah, I think in the long term, it just won't bring you joy. Like it will sap away at your energy if that's the kind of energy that you put out over a long period of time.
Yeah, for me personally, definitely. I don't know, maybe there's some people out there who get energy from that. Maybe. But for me, I know no.
Definitely not, man. Okay, so let me get to an important topic. Let's talk about Final Fantasy soundtracks and which ones you believe are the best.
Oh boy.
We got to talk about this.
Okay, here's the thing. When people ask me about my favorite Final Fantasy specifically, especially the soundtracks, I don't know if I can pinpoint to a best one. I can pinpoint to what each was best at.
Okay.
Like, I don't know. Final Fantasy VIII was the best at being diverse and at innovating.
Okay.
And also 13. But 13 has the best 13 has the best harmonies and how can I explain that in a way that is easy to understand? 13 feels so different. Like the music in the first 13 feels so different from any other because of the way Masashi Hamauzu writes music. Like he uses, if harmony is a combination of colors, say like red and black or whatever. The colors that he fuses, no one fuses in the same way. Okay. Like, the colors that he uses are the same colors that everyone else uses, okay? Because we only have the ones we have. But the way he mixes them creates images that no one else thought of creating in the entire Final Fantasy saga.
I think sorry to interrupt. I think I remember reading that he was a vocalist in a band as well or something. Is that true?
Really?
I'm pretty sure I read that in like an Ultimania.
Wow.
So I think there's a song where I think they wanted him to provide vocals for it, like in the choir as well or something like that, or he was in the choir for one of the songs.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
He has like a vocal background as well, I believe.
Yeah, and he's like, Hamauzu was born, I think he was born in Germany, and then he moved to Japan or something. Like, he's Japanese, but he was born in Germany.
Okay.
And he's different. I don't know how to explain it in a way that non-musicians will understand it, but just think of a painter who uses the same color as everyone else, but the way he mixes them is unlike any other. And you can hear that in tracks like Dust to Dust. You can hear it in tracks like... you can hear that actually in Dirge of Cerberus, Final Fantasy VII, or in some tracks of Final Fantasy X, because like Wandering Flame was composed by Hamauzu, if I'm not wrong.
I think, I'm pretty sure it was, yeah.
Yeah, and
in Final Fantasy X, he has some of the best. Servants of the Mountain, the Rumso track is his. There's some incredible songs in Final Fantasy X that he's a part of. I think it's kind of underrated. I think because Uematsu is like the godfather of Final Fantasy music. I do feel like Hamauzu's a little bit underappreciated. I think for his talent.
Because he sadly he composed music for the Final Fantasy games that did not do so well. Sadly.
That's true.
And actually, I still don't understand the underappreciation for the 13 saga. I loved it, but
totally agree.
Totally
agree.
Yeah, he's great, and also 13.2 has the best villain theme in my opinion.
Yeah, okay, because it's good.
Like the orchestration, this is something that it's like I think like when you're a musician, and especially you're an orchestral musician, the way you process and you listen to orchestral music is now different. Like if you become a chef, the way you eat, the way like the food you get to appreciate is completely different.
Yeah.
And for me, after I made orchestral music for years, when I listened to the villain theme from 13.2, like not the first iteration, there's a different iteration called the Pledge of Chaos or something, which is very orchestrated. That one is one of the best orchestrations in Final Fantasy 13, in Final Fantasy in general.
Okay.
Then, 7 is special. 7 is like, dude, like, I don't even know how to describe it. 7 soundtrack is just iconic.
I think from like the perspective of someone who doesn't like know about music, for me the feeling that I have for 7 is that I think in terms of like the way in which each track can vividly bring back memories of where you were in the game at the time.
Oh yeah,
I think Final Fantasy 7 does that better than any Final Fantasy that I've played. I think
I agree. It's the best world building through music. Definitely, there's 7 excels in world building. 9 excels being the best. One of the best medieval soundtracks to Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
And also, it was beautiful how they managed to write music that was super cheerful, but also super dark.
Yeah.
Like, and it felt like it belonged together. Like, Uematsu was so good at that.
Yeah.
And if I have to say, like, probably one of my favorite soundtracks of Final Fantasy, though, I would say 7 Remake.
Okay.
Like, it feels like a magnum opus of all the experiences that, because you have, like, Uematsu did not write music for 7 Remake except for Hollow. But the entire soundtrack is essentially based on Uematsu's work. Yeah. So there's Uematsu all over it. You have Hamauzu, who's a fucking genius, brought his own way of writing music. You have what's his name? Suzuki, which is great as well. Like a super good orchestration. He made the final boss theme of Final Fantasy 13 Lightning Returns, which is just fucking insane.
I liked some of Yoko Shimomura's music in 15.
Oh yeah,
hers was great.
Wow. And also like another person that worked a lot on 15 that people don't know about, Yoshitaka Suzuki. Okay. Not the same Suzuki of Final Fantasy Remake. Yoshitaka Suzuki is a composer that wrote music usually for in Final Fantasy 13. He wrote music for the certain cutscenes, the most cinematic ones. He wrote also music for Final Fantasy 14 in some certain boss fights. And in 15, he wrote Hellfire, which is the track that plays versus Ifrit.
Yep.
And that is one of the craziest tracks I ever heard in Final Fantasy. And everyone went fucking insane for it. But everyone thinks Yoko Shimomura wrote it because sadly, Yoko Shimomura is like, sadly, it's great Yoko Shimomura was the lead composer for 15. And by being the lead composer, she essentially got all of the praise. But if you check the metadata for the soundtracks, there should be written that Hellfire was from Yoshitaka Suzuki. And so was Wanderlust, another track that everyone loved from 15. One. So many times you also have the problem that the composers don't get the credit because people don't know.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I don't know exactly how it works when there's like multiple credits for a song, like who does what and all that kind of stuff. I don't know how the breakdown is, how they share the responsibility.
It depends on the game. Sometimes, like for example, Tekken music, the credit goes to the Namco sound team. Even though the Namco sound team is like so many different composers, the composers themselves don't really get the credit. Okay. Namco does. And it's kind of sad.
So like, for example, like for Final Fantasy X, so like A Fleeting Dream, which is obviously one of the most like iconic, well-known. If you look at the music, it mentions Uematsu and Hamauzu as well. So it's like, I don't know how they both made it, if that makes sense.
Well, here's the thing, like A Fleeting Dream is based on, it goes this way. So that's a good question. Essentially, A Fleeting Dream is a great example. Uematsu wrote the main melody on which A Fleeting Dream is based.
Okay.
Like ba 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 ba. That's Suteki Dane, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think Uematsu wrote that one. A Fleeting Dream, though, is a rearrangement of Suteki Dane written by Hamauzu.
Okay, yes.
But because it's based on a Uematsu melody, they also have to include him.
Okay.
And that also like happens throughout the FF7 remake soundtrack. They did this, but in a bad way, actually, because in there, for many of the tracks written originally by Uematsu on the original FF7, in the remake, they wrote Uematsu as the only composer. That is not correct, because the tracks were arranged by different people.
Yeah.
You know? Like, I don't know, the Airbuster was not arranged by Uematsu. It was arranged by Tadayoshi Makino, if I'm not wrong. But they still wrote Nobuo Uematsu, if I'm not wrong. So that's, I don't know why they do that. You know, but it makes sense that you write his name because he's the original composer. But then you should add to the side that it was arranged by, you know, this other composer.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think Final Fantasy X was one of those soundtracks where Suteki Dane is used in a lot of different tracks, which I thought was really weird. Like, it's so versatile. Where like you have like the vocal version, and then you have like all of these other where it appears in different ways.
That happens a lot throughout the Final Fantasy saga. Like, I wanted to make a video where I showed just how many times the Final Fantasy VII main theme appeared in FF7 Remake. Dude, it's more than 20 times. Like,
whoa.
Dude, even there, I noticed that on the demo, even like in the bombing mission run. You know, the music has stages, right? So when you fight, it's more energetic. When you're just roaming around, it goes a bit more quiet. And when it goes a bit more quiet, if you let it loop for a while, there's a part where the woodwinds go ba 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 ba, and that's like the FF7 main theme in minor key. And it's just a detail that plays in the background while the bombing mission plays. And this happens a lot in FF7 Remake. I wanted to make a video about it, but I was like, maybe people don't care, or maybe people notice. But this actually happens throughout Final Fantasy quite a lot, even in 13. In 13, the leitmotif is like ba 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 ba, or there's also the lightning thing that ba da ba. No, how did it go? It's in Blinded by Light.
Right. Okay.
Shit, I don't remember. No, that's Undertale. Well, there's a there's a leitmotif for Lightning theme. There's a leitmotif for The Promise. In 12, the leitmotifs are so many. One is like ba 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 ba. 12.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
Every fucking where.
It's true. Yeah, it's everywhere.
Dude, it's one day I'm gonna make videos about this because there's so many. But in 10, it's very clear where they use Soteki Dane.
Yeah, 10 seems to be a bit more obvious. Like some of the other ones that you mentioned, I wouldn't have like recognized it as much. But for 10s, I think it's quite obvious. I think compared to the others. So, tough question. If you were on a desert island and you could only take 3 video game soundtracks with you, which ones would you take?
I like this question. Well, surely FF7 Remake because of the sheer quantity of music in there. Final Fantasy 14.
Okay.
Because again, sheer quantity of music. Also, Masayoshi Soken is so good at writing music in so many different styles. And some tracks he wrote are so incredible. And then I think probably Final Fantasy X. So 7 Remake, 14, and 10 or 13. I don't know. I have to choose. Well, 10. Okay, so I have Nobuo Uematsu on 10.
Yeah.
Hamauzu and Suzuki on 7 Remake, and then I have Soken on 14. There you go. That's sadly I'm sacrificing Yoko Shiomura on 15, but for Yoko Shiomura, I actually like her work on Kingdom Hearts even more.
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
So you're taking all Final Fantasies. What if I said you can only take one Final Fantasy and the 2 have to be non-Final Fantasy? I'm not going to let you get away that easily.
Oh shit. Well, okay, only one Final Fantasy, 7 Remake.
Okay, and what about
I love 7 Remake so much, even for the tracks like Little Stamp. You know?
Okay, I can't even recall that track, to be honest. I need to listen to the soundtrack again. It's been a while.
It's a jukebox track that plays sometimes.
Okay.
2 other soundtracks from different games.
Yeah.
Oh shit. Fuck. Damn. That's a very difficult question. It might change depending on the day. Really.
Okay, let me give you one of mine, and then you can probably comment on it because it's featured on your channel before. Nier Automata would be one.
That's a great one. That's a very good one. I still
soundtrack.
Wouldn't take that to an like. I think I would pick something else, but that's a fucking good one, man.
I feel like there's a good bit of variety in that one, man. There's a little bit of everything in Nier Automata. I think
my favorite track in that soundtrack is the one that plays in the Pascal village.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that. I literally,
so cool.
Throughout the commentary playthrough, I literally just used to go to Pascal's village, and every time I was there, I was like, I love the soundtrack.
Yeah, dude, it's so interesting. Like, it's so different.
100%.
And it's catchy too. But yeah, Nier Automata is a very diverse soundtrack, and it's very different too. It's sounds like opera in many different tracks, like Simone and stuff. It sounds like opera music. And the other two soundtracks, I don't know, dude. Like, I could say Tekken soundtracks, I could say Bloodborne, I could say Kingdom Hearts, I could say, oh god, there's so many that Smash Brothers. Okay, Smash Brothers Ultimate.
Okay,
because that contains all the soundtracks from all the games, and the arrangements are so good. And then probably there's also Persona 5, dude. It's so good. It's there's so much stuff, but also like one underappreciated Zone of the Enders. I don't know if you played that game.
Yeah, you mentioned it in one of your videos, but I've not played Zone of the Enders, no.
Well, here's the thing that I discovered. Zone of the Enders is a game I played when I was a kid. And the second one had the soundtrack that was fucking amazing too. And there was a remix of one of the leading soundtracks, leading pieces of music that was so good. And I listened to it all the fucking time. And I was looking for it like 2 months ago or something, because I hadn't listened to it in 5, 6, 7 years. And I finally found out who was the composer for that remix, and it was Mitsuto Suzuki, the same guy who worked on FF7 remake. So
shit, okay.
Yeah, I frequently have these moments where for example, even Masashi Hamauzu, when I was little, I had the Final Fantasy X soundtrack on my computer, but the artist names were in Japanese.
Okay.
And my computer could not read those. So I got weird characters and stuff. So I always thought it was Nobuo Uematsu.
Okay.
For all my childhood. And then a few years ago, I checked out the soundtracks on Spotify, and they listed Masashi Hamauzu.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute, So I've been loving Masashi Hamauzu stuff even before I heard it in 13 and Tears of Cerberus.
Yeah.
Because it was in Final Fantasy X, and some of my favorite tracks were from Hamauzu. So I keep on having these moments where I'm like, when I was a little kid, I didn't know who the artists were.
Yeah.
And then I discovered that my favorite artists were my favorite artists before I even knew who they were. So
I think with Hamauzu, I think it's the same with me, because I'm not that much of a musician anyway. Like, I didn't have that connection with like who wrote it and all that stuff. But once you learn, like, as a Final Fantasy fan, once you learn Uematsu's name, it's like it feels like he's everything. Like, he does everything.
Yeah.
And then like when you actually look through the track list and you're like, wait a minute, let me see all of the times Hamauzu appears. And it's like literally, I'm scrolling through it now. It's like Besaid, Spirit Unplugged, Hymn of the Faith, like all of those.
It's very like with Hamauzu, like you can guess it. Like Uematsu, here's the thing you can recognize each composer with. Uematsu, you can recognize him because of how his melodies usually, like he's used to write music for, kind of games where the music loops after a while, usually. Like old Final Fantasy, they loop. So his melodies are very conclusive. They tend to loop. It's not like they don't have this like cinematic flow where the melodies keep on changing for like 5 minutes straight. Usually they loop after a while. Second, the battle themes of Uematsu have the best bass lines. And usually this starts like do 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 do. They always have that bass line there.
Yeah.
And there's also crazy bass line throughout the music. That's usually Uematsu's doing. As for Hamauzu, you recognize him because of how he writes the string passages. Like the string ensembles feel very thick with emotion that you cannot when you listen to Hamauzu stuff, it's not easy to say this track is happy or this track is sad. It's like both at the same time. You're like, what am I supposed to think? It has this very calming feeling because it puts you in this place where you're allowed to be confused, in a way.
Yeah.
And also he uses a lot of woodwinds like flutes, and uses a lot of it's like it does this triangle. Like there's a track in the Tears of Cerberus called fight tune The Immaculate, which plays against the final boss.
Okay.
That's the Hamauzu sound. He uses a lot of bells, he uses triangles, he uses woodwinds, and he uses these big strings. And that's Hamauzu. Yoko Shimomura sounds like freaking O Fortuna, you know? Oh, Fortuna! Like the apocalyptic orchestration of that soundtrack is Yoko Shimomura style, essentially. Especially in Final Fantasy 15.
I think in 15, my favorite track of that one, like the higher energy ones, was Nvidia, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I loved Nvidia. That dun,
yeah.
Like the way it just comes in was just brilliant. I love that.
Yeah, and also like the organ playing along with the choir. Holy shit. That's cool.
Okay, well, I got another question. Two tracks that I'm always torn about in terms of which one I like more is first, Man with a Machine Gun in Final Fantasy 8, and two is Seymour Battle Theme from 10. I love those tracks. They're both very different.
No, actually, they're very similar.
No, I meant like relative to like kind of the rest of the soundtrack. That's what I meant.
Oh, yeah.
Not to each other.
They stand out because they are essentially techno music, like in a way. Like they're like, one thing that distinguishes electronic music is that it usually, the drum pattern in electronic music is like boom, 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 boom. So like you have the kick playing on every chord, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. There's always a kick playing there. And that usually is played at around 128 BPM because at that speed it can sync easily with your heartbeat.
Right.
So, or something like that. And it's easy to dance, you pour on the floor kick. That's what it's called. Both Seymour Battle and The Man with the Machine Gun are based on that sort of like electronic music kick pattern, 4 on the floor that makes people dance. So you have that. And also there's also synthesizers in those pieces of music too. And that what makes them stand out. Usually, like most Uematsu tracks don't have like a 4 on the floor kick pattern that sounds like dance or techno. Those tracks do, and they stand out for that reason.
Is there one you prefer over the other?
Seymour Battle, definitely. Like The Man with the Machine Gun is definitely cool. It's very different, and also we all love Laguna and Kiro's on board. So when he plays, we're all having a good time anyway. Seymour Battle is very interesting because it's like that. It's like techno, EDM, but also you have this arpeggio like that thing right there.
Yeah.
Which is very ghastly and creepy. And at the same time, it's very epic too. True. And it's very, I don't know if you listen to progressive rock or progressive metal.
It's not really my genre, to be fair.
Okay. Well, Seymour Battle is a progressive metal track though. Like,
yeah.
if you listen to Dream Theater or stuff like that, you are gonna notice things that you're like, oh, this sounds like Seymour, because Uematsu was huge on progressive rock music, and Seymour Battle is one of the tracks where you hear that most because of how it was written. So not only is it like techno, it's also progressive rock, and it's also creepy and epic. Nice. So definitely Seymour Battle for me is super cool.
Nice, that's fair.
Yeah.
So what do you think has happened to like Final Fantasy music as time has gone on, like with each new title, like the evolution of Final Fantasy music?
Let's say that when they announced that Final Fantasy 13 was not going to be scored by Uematsu, I got scared. But after I played the game, I was actually happy that they got the job. They let the job. They got Hamauzu on the job. And also 12, like, okay, different composer there too. Same composer as Final Fantasy Tactics, Hitoshi Sakamoto. Such a fucking legend. That guy's freaking incredible. He's the John Williams of Final Fantasy. Like, his music has the same quality as Star Wars and Harry Potter, the first 2 movies. And it sounds so good. And I find that as the saga goes on, the music keeps on innovating. That's what is happening. The music keeps on changing and innovating, and each Final Fantasy soundtrack is great for a different reason. I find that's also what they're trying to do with the games themselves. Like, each Final Fantasy tries to do a different thing. It's funny, people say, this is not a Final Fantasy game. This is what Final Fantasy is about. This is the only... People seem to know what Final Fantasy means, but we don't. Because Final Fantasy, I think, is this IP that, yes, is based on foundations. Like, you have Ifrit in every game, and you have, spells, and it's a fantasy game, and there's usually you have to defeat gods and shit like that. But each game tells the tale in a completely different story, in a completely different way, and they're not trying to, copy the previous ones. They're always trying to do different stuff all the time. Many times people are not happy about it. I am, because I get to experience different things, and I'm like, wow, it's so interesting what they did here, they did there. Okay, 15's development has been butchered, and so it suffered, and it sucked a little bit. It's true, but hey, it was also good to have this bromance story, and just roam around. So I feel Final Fantasy in general tries to keep on changing, and so does the music. And the music always manages to do that in the best of ways. The games sometimes they don't, but I still appreciate them a lot.
I agree. I mean, I think the music is always one of these things where I don't know how they do it, but like even if a Final Fantasy game doesn't really live up to it, I think people are always, there's very rarely where you hear like people are disappointed with the soundtrack, or like the soundtrack sucked.
I think maybe it's like the soundtracks have way less chance for failure, because well, as a first thing, they're usually composed by just a handful of people, like I don't know, 3, 4, 5 people.
Yeah.
While the game is being developed by, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of people. And there's so many things that go into, like, you have the problem that what if the game is actually good, but then the people who are working on marketing promise too much. That makes the game bad, for certain people. But the music, you never have the trailer like, this is going to be the best music you ever heard, motherfuckers. No one says that. You just hear some snippets of the real music in the trailers, and that's essentially what you get. And more. So with the game, I think like it's hard because there's a much bigger team at work, but with a soundtrack, you're pretty much sure that, it's going to be Hamauzu. Okay, he's great. And, it ends up being amazing. Very rarely games have soundtracks that are forgettable. Also because, some games like Ace Combat 7, the release of the game was delayed because they wanted to write one piece of music in the soundtrack that felt super iconic.
Wow.
They're that dedicated. I'm quite sure, even like, I don't know, the final boss track in FF7 Remake, I'm sure that they spent a lot of effort on that one,
Yeah.
So yeah, in the music, there's always something that stands out a lot. And the things that don't stand out so much, we just forget about them, and, it's not like, okay, I have to play like 10 hours of game to listen to the soundtrack. No, you play the game, the soundtrack is just accompanying it. Well, if a game has 10 hours of chapters that are just bullshit, then you're going to want those hours back.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a bit different.
Are there any like video game soundtracks that you listen to, even though maybe you've never heard the game or you haven't got to play the game yet, but you've listened to it just because you've heard that, let's say, the soundtrack's great? Or is it only games that you've played for which you're listening to soundtracks?
For example, that was Final Fantasy 13, that was Bloodborne, that... let me think. Because I end up playing those games after. Like many times I listen to the soundtrack of a game and I'm like, okay, now I need to play it. Undertale is another.
Okay, so for you that almost works backwards sometimes. You hear the soundtrack before you've played the game.
Yes, but then also for certain games, I'm like, now that I have this YouTube channel and stuff that I make reactions, sometimes I don't want to listen to the music before playing the game or something.
Sure.
Or I don't know. But yeah, also, I don't know, Devil May Cry maybe, or stuff like that. Yeah, it happens frequently. I listen to music from a certain game without playing the game.
Okay.
And I find that sometimes gives me a better understanding of the music in a weird way. Because I'm not disillusioned to the fact that we love certain pieces of game music, not because of the music, but because of the game itself. Because, this, like, Megalovania, this is the piece of music that played when that amazing thing happened in Undertale. Okay, true. Then you listen to it because it brings you back to that thing, not because of the quality of the music.
True.
But then actually Megalovania is an amazing piece of music. But when I listen to music without knowing the context of the game, I can listen to the music more.
Yeah.
Rather than,
That's good, because it brings me to probably like the final thing I want to talk about for this thing is like, let's say you have people out there that want to be the next Alex Moukala. Like, what's your advice to those kind of people? How can they get into the kind of things that you're doing? How do we become better at like listening to music and being able to create our own things and that kind of stuff? So like, even for someone like me, like, how can I get better at appreciating video game soundtracks other than just simply being like, oh, this sounds good, or like, oh, this is epic?
So figuring, okay, one thing that I did Well, obviously for me, like the thing that helped is like I, became a musician and I started reverse engineering the soundtracks, like rewriting the landing by ear and orchestrating and rewriting Omnis Lacrima or whatever, Apocalypse Noctis by ear.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that I always done ever since I can remember is when I listen to music, initially initially when people listen to music, they pay attention to the main melody,
Mm-hmm.
When you listen to Don't Be Afraid, Final Fantasy VIII.
Okay.
Ba 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 ba, something like that, right? That's the main melody.
Yeah.
When you listen to that, you may be listening to the main melody, you're like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
But and you maybe sing along to that, but can you sing along to the counter melody? Like ba 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 ba, and like I would need to have the piece of music playing along and sing it to you, but to make you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But for example, in Don't Be Afraid, when the strings play the main melody, there's some brass doing ba 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 ba, like something like that accompanies the main melody. And what I did as a kid, when normally when listening to video game music, is I sang along to these things. Like I sang along to the backing instruments, not the main melody, but to, I don't know, the bass line. Or I sang along to the brass playing the secondary melody in the background and stuff like that. So I would just, when you listen to music, try to identify what's going on besides the main melody. Just like when you see a magic trick, if you want to figure it out, you have to look at the hands, not at the trick itself. Look what the magician is doing.
Yeah.
And listen to what the orchestra is doing. Listen to, I don't know, the drums or the bass or stuff like that. And that's one thing that helped. And then when I got very good at that, and I could discern the backing elements because I'm so used to listening to those, I started singing stuff that was not there. Like I listened to, I don't know, FF10 battle theme. Okay. I could sing to the synthesizer, I could sing to the bass line, I could sing to this, that, or I could sing a new melodic idea that plays on top of what's already there. And I started doing that a lot while listening to music, like improvising melodies to sing on top of what's there. Like I was doing like, oh, what would I add here? What would I add there? And that kind of gives you a bit of a better understanding of the music. Because it's like, if you want to add stuff on top of it, you have to understand what is going on.
Mm-hmm.
And now I kind of do it naturally. Like even like when I listen to music all the fucking time, I'm singing stuff that doesn't exist that I think would go so well on top of the music. And it's a good exercise and it's fun. And it's useful for when you do have to compose yourself. Another thing that might help a lot is, if you can somehow, I don't know if that's possible, some video game, like sometimes video games like Nier Automata, I think it has this. In the game files, you can have access to the music or something, like the different tracks in the music.
Yeah. Okay.
So you can, or on YouTube, like there's people uploading this on YouTube. Like, hey, do you like Rules of Nature from Metal Gear Solid Rising Revengeance? Good. Go on YouTube, look for Rules of Nature instrumental or Rules of Nature vocals only and stuff. You'd be surprised how many things you'd notice if you just listen to the a cappella version of a soundtrack.
Yeah, that's true.
So like for me, it's like this obsessive need to figure out what is going on in the music. Like, hey, let's listen to a cappella, listen to the instrumental, let's try to sing along to the bass, let's try to sing stuff that's not there. And usually that really helped me.
That's interesting, man. It's just such a different way of just thinking about something that for like a normal person, you just like, it's totally just based on feeling. You just absorb these sound waves and your brain processes them, you get a feeling, and that's kind of it. You just play your game kind of thing. But with you, it's
kind of like, I don't know.
This whole other thing is crazy.
Yeah, but this happens obviously when, this is why I noticed the FF7 main theme so many times in FF7 remake, Yeah. Also, like, have you ever noticed, do you remember the part when the Sector 7 plate collapses?
Okay.
In FF7 remake. And you're walking on top of it. Like there's a sunset.
Yeah.
And you're walking on a destroyed Midgar. In that part, there's a theme that plays. And with piano, which is very sad. There's some piano and some trumpets playing. And the trumpets are playing a melody along with the cello that is so sad. And you're like, somehow everybody that got to that part, like if you watch videos of that part on YouTube after, you're gonna listen to music and be like, oh yeah, this music was so fucking cool. And I did not notice this while playing the game, but I noticed this while listening to the soundtrack over and over because I loved it. That melody played in that part was the same melody that you hear when you encounter Biggs and Wedge for the first time. Like,
okay.
That melody is played so many times throughout FF7 Remake in so many different ways. When you do the flying, like when you there's a scene where they're flying with the parachutes, like Biggs, Wedge, Jesse, and Cloud.
I love that scene.
It plays there too.
Okay, like, I remember it
now. It plays there, but on synthesizers in a different way. Then it plays when Barrett is like talking against President Shinra. Is like there's a moment where, before the Airbuster fight, there's Barrett that is like being like, no, we believe in the planet, and we're defending the planet. This is the cradle of Avalanche. And he's talking to the camera. And in that moment, there's a big orchestral, build up. And then you hear, ba 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 ba. It's like the Avalanche theme. And then when the Sector 7 collapses, you have that sad song playing on trumpets, and the melody is the same. So the game is telling you, this is the theme of Avalanche. We played it in the best Avalanche moments in a happy way or in an epic way when Barrett is giving his speech. But now that shit happened to Wedge, Jesse, and Biggs and stuff, we play it again in a very sad way.
Yeah, it's just amazing how subtly they can take your mind to a place and you don't even know that they're doing it. It's crazy.
It's a magic trick. Dude, it's a magic trick. That's essentially what it is. And if you want to pay attention to it, just watch the hands. Don't pay attention to the magic trick. Just watch what the hands are doing. So listen to the backing instruments and to the recurring melodies, and it's kind of like eating a dish and trying to discern the ingredients that were used. You can let the taste take over you and be like, oh, this is good. Or you can be like, okay, this is probably tomato. They use garlic here, they use that, and that you figure it out, and you get better at it the more you do it.
Yeah.
But you have to have this willingness to really figure out what the hell is going on and not be just blown away by the magic. Someone might argue that, okay, but if you get to the place where you can dissect everything and understand what's going on, then you don't think it's magic anymore and you don't enjoy it anymore. That's not true. You enjoy it more. Like that's why I'm such a big nerd for video game music, because I'm like, oh my God, I see what I did here, and I cannot wait to tell people about this, So it's a fun thing to do.
Nice. I think that's a good way to round it off. And to be honest, I still had a bunch of stuff here that we could have talked about, but it's run over 2 hours at the moment.
Yeah, we can make another episode in the future too. I had a lot of fun, man.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great meeting you and great chatting to you, and hopefully we can do this again. Yeah,
and I think we have so many things in common. So there's also that. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, we've had quite similar paths in life, it seems. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me, man. Thank you for your time.
No problem. I hope everybody enjoys this conversation besides us, because it's been very entertaining for us. I hope the listeners will also enjoy it too. And thank you for having me.
Thank you, man. Take care. See you later.
Cheers. Bye.